All right, we're live. Shalom, everyone. It's Torah Study Tuesday. All right, awesome. Just want to make sure whatever you ate for dinner, if you ate any already, that you got to get that energy back up, because it can put you into that post-meal. Okay, we're studying the Torah today. We got to get excited about that. All right, so this is our Tuesday night Torah study when we go through the weekly Torah portion cycle, which is the one-year cycle of going from Genesis to Deuteronomy. We're right now in the middle of Leviticus. Actually, we're kind of getting through it pretty good here towards the end of Leviticus. And so we're very excited about that. All right, so if you're new, if you just found us, welcome. We'll talk more about that during some announcements. What we're going to do first is we're going to take up prayer needs. After prayer needs, we're going to go ahead and read this week's Torah portion, which is a fairly short one, only 2 chapters. And then we'll go ahead and go over some announcements, and then we'll discuss what we read, okay? So if you have a prayer need or a praise, we don't have the podium set up for that. Steve, go get that. So if anybody has a praise or prayer that needs to be addressed, we can go ahead and bring up the mic and the stand for that. And if you're online, I've got Grayson on the back there on the live stream desk, and he'll make note of yours as well. Okay, you going to do the one that you talked to me about earlier? No, you can do it. Okay, so we're going to begin with Rebitz and Julie.
Okay, thank you. So I'm asking prayers for Stephanie Meyer. She called me today, and she's been in the hospital all day. They're running a bunch of tests on her. Her liver and gallbladder are in distress, and that's all the information she has now. So if you can all keep our sister Stephanie Meyer in your prayer and her family. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, Ashley.
Thank you, Rabbi. I just wanted to come up here and praise Yahweh. I wanted to say thank you for the realization and the bubble popping that I've always wanted to volunteer more at the feast, and I always feel like I'm not able to because of my situation. And I'm just doing rags, that's nothing. And something clicked in my head the other night and going, wait a minute, that's a very important job. Because if I didn't do that, the building could become a disaster really quickly, and outside stuff can be a disaster. And I just wanted to say thank you because that was a big step for me, and just go, I am enough. So thank you.
Amen. Look, you can't clean things unless you have clean rags to clean them with, and that's part of what you do, and that's just fantastic. And if we didn't have clean rags, then Grayson wouldn't have had anything to wrap the cup in to break the other day at his wedding. So, All right, Rabbi Tom.
Thank you. Joanne informed me this afternoon that our air conditioning doesn't work, so I want to pray that we can get our air conditioning fixed, because when it gets up in the 90s, we're going to be pretty miserable.
All right. We certainly can pray for that. Bad timing for things like air conditioners to go out, right? Or in the winter when your heat goes out. So absolutely, we certainly can pray for that. Okay, Olivier?
Hi, Rabbi. Just prayer request for travel mercies. I'm leaving for a quick trip at the end of this week. I'm coming back over the weekend.
Okay. All right. And of course, it's not that there's an urgency here, but we'll continue to pray that our elder is getting a lot of rest, and he's enjoying his time with some family as he's away for a couple of days. He'll be back later on Wednesday, so he'll be back here Thursday. But just to keep... Not prayer like anything's bad, but just prayer that he gets a really good rest and a good time and just enjoys himself, because you guys have worn him out. No, I'm sorry, I didn't say that out loud. I mean, because he really loves to come back with the energy. Plus, I miss him because I have to now do all of this without going here, and I hand him stuff all the time. So, anyway. Oh, and Rabbi Tom says, Billy, because I'm sure you're watching that, Rabbi Tom says he's got a whole pile of phone messages for you when you get back. Not that you should be thinking about that while you're on vacation. It's bad enough that I call him twice a day anyway. Okay, so, all right. Anybody else? All right, live stream.
From Shirley Pelu, Unspoken. From Suzanne Siebert. Prayers for my daughter, Terry, that she won't lose her leg. from Pamela Shuford. Prayers for my son's issues and prayers for a friend who will be listening to beware false prophets. From Elaine, unspoken. From Becky Manning, prayer for me, I'm getting depressingly overwhelmed. From B. Rose, prayers for my mental health, please don't know what I'm experiencing and how to address it at times. From Shirley Akpelu, I have a family member with cancer who needs prayer. From Nellie Trujillo, unspoken. From McCall G.E., prayers for healing of back pain from training, prayer for discipline, praise Abba for leadership, especially Rabbi Tom for helping with my questions. From Maisie Hill, prayer for Yahweh's mercy regarding severe chronic arthritis pain in several areas in my body. Pain is relentless and unbearable, so please keep me in prayer. From Sandy Toter, praise the Lord God, bless me with a new bike to get me around New York City. I'm 72. Hallelujah. Shalom, family. Praise Yah that our family plans to move to Cleveland, Tennessee are going great. From Vaskin, praise for a very successful feast, and to Dale Hersey for organizing everything. Praise to Yah for allowing all of us to gather. Looking forward to Shavuot. And then there's many more unspoken.
Amen. Okay, absolutely. We could pray for all those things. We appreciate all the praises as well. All right, I need one of the men to raise their hand. We're going to go ahead and open up in prayer. Let's see. Harold, you want to come on up here? We'll get you a mic. Steve's going to bring the mic up to you. Just bring it over here, and he'll just stand there. All right, so Harold Olson will open us in prayer.
Almighty, merciful Abba, again, thank you for this chance to come together here and hear each another's prayer requests and the praises. And we pray, thank you for be able to do that. And I pray that you would take and answer these as you see fit, and that you would provide shalom with whatever answers you give for them. And also I want to thank you for the time to come together and read your word, and for the teacher you give us to help us understand it, and help us to take out of it what we need for our walk. I want to thank you for these things and pray for the things in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right, so today's Torah portion, this week's Torah portion is Kedoshim. Kedoshim means holy or set apart in the plural, right? So it's holy ones or holy things. It's a plurality of things that are holy. And we look at the verse that we're talking about, it's talking about Israel being set apart, okay? And so this is in the plural. So it's set apart in the plural. Now, it's chapter 19 and 20 from Leviticus, right? Chapter 19 and 20. This is normally part of a double portion, which is Acharei Mot, which is last week's portion, or the one we did just prior to this, and Kedoshim. So normally you have 4 chapters together as a double portion, but because we are still in the year where they spread things out, they have, a lot of double portions are broken up into singles. So anyway, we got a lot to cover, though, in this Torah portion, so there'll still be a lot to do, even though it's only 2 chapters. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to need 4 readers up here. I've got Rabbi Tom as number 5, so if people want to go ahead and line up. That'll be perfect. Thank you. All right. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to call up each reader one at a time. I'm going to recite a blessing over the reader, and then I'm going to tell you what verses you're going to read. We'll go through the entire list of people until we finish the readings for the day, and then we'll have some announcements, and then we'll discuss what we read. So if you are going to participate in this, I highly recommend that, A, you have your scriptures open so you can follow along, whether it's on your phone or however you access the scriptures, and also that you have a way to make notes. Because there may be something that comes up that we read that you're inspired to ask a question about or make a comment about. And so then we can utilize that during the discussion portion afterwards. Okay, so we'll begin with Rebitz and Julie. And actually, hold on. Let me take my notes away. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rebitz and Julie, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to start us off in chapter 19 and read verses 1 through 12.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say to them, Be set apart, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am set apart. Each one of you shall fear his mother and his father, and guard my Sabbaths. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Do not turn to idols, and do not make for yourselves molded mighty ones. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. And when you slaughter a slaughtering of peace offerings to Yahweh, slaughter it for your acceptance. It is eaten the same day you slaughter it, and on the next day. And that which is left on the third day is burned with fire. So if it is eaten at all on the third day, it is abominable. It is not accepted. And he who eats it bears his crookedness, because he has profaned the set-apart offering of Yahweh. And that being shall be cut off from his people. And when you reap the harvest of your land, do not completely reap the corners of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. And do not glean your vineyard or gather every grape of your vineyard. Leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Do not steal. Do not lie. Do not deceive one another. And do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your Elohim. I am Yahweh.
Amen. Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is Ashley. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Ashley, who has come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us from verse 13 to 25.
Thank you. Do not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of him who is hired is not to remain with you all night until morning. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind, but fear your Elohim. I am Yahweh. Do no unrighteousness in right ruling. Do not be partial to the poor or favor the face of the great, but rightly rule your neighbor in righteousness. Do not go standing among your people. Do not go slandering among your people. Do not stand against the blood of your neighbor. I am Yahweh. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Reprove your neighbor for certain, and bear no sin because of him. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. Guard my laws. Do not let your livestock mate with another kind. Do not sow your field with mixed seeds, and do not put a garment woven of two sorts of thread upon you. And when a man has intercourse with a woman who is a female servant, engaged to a man, and to be ransomed, but she has not been ransomed nor set free, there should be an inquiry, but they are not put to death, because she was not free. And he shall bring his guilt offering to Yahweh, to the door of the tent of appointment, a ram as a guilt offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering before Yahweh, for his sin which he has done, and the sin which he has sinned shall be forgiven him. And when you come into the land, and have planted all kinds of trees for food, then you shall reckon their fruit as uncircumcised. For 3 years it is as uncircumcised to you, and it is not eaten. And in the 4th year all its fruit is set apart, praises to Yahweh. And in the 5th year you eat its fruit, so that it increases its yield to you. I am Yahweh, your Elohim.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is Janet. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Janet, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now from verse 26 to the end of the chapter.
Do not eat meat with the blood. Do not practice divination or magic. Do not round the corner of your head, nor destroy the corner of your beard. And do not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor put tattoo marks on you. I am Yahweh. Do not profane your daughter by making her a whore, so that the land does not whore, and the land becomes filled with wickedness. Guard my Sabbath and reverence my set-apart place. I am Yahweh. Do not turn to mediums, and do not seek after spiritists to be defiled by them. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Rise up before the gray-headed, and you shall favor the face of an old man, and shall fear your Elohim. I am Yahweh. And when a stranger sojourns with you in your land, do not oppress him. Let the stranger who dwells among you be to you as a native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Do no unrighteousness in right ruling, in measurement of length, in weight, or in measuring liquids. Have right scales, right weight, a right ephah, and a right hin. I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. And you shall guard all my laws and all my right rulings, and do them. I am Yahweh.
All right, which one of you wants to go last, Rabbi Tom or Shira? We'll finish with you. All right. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shira, who's come to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now to chapter 20 and read verses 1 through 14.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Say to the children of Yisrael, any man of the children of Yisrael, or of the strangers who sojourn in Yisrael, who gives any of his offspring to Molech, shall certainly be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. And I shall set my face against that man, and shall cut him off from the midst of his people, because he has given of his offspring to Molech, so as to defile my set-apart place and to profane my set-apart name. And if the people of the land at all hide their eyes from the man as he gives any of his offspring to Molech, and they do not kill him, then I shall set my face against that man and against his clan, and shall cut him off. And all who go whoring after him, even go whoring after Molech, from the midst of their people. And the being who turns to mediums and to spiritists to go whoring after them, I shall set my face against that being and cut him off from the midst of his people. And you shall set yourselves apart and shall be set apart, for I am Yahweh, your Elohim. And you shall guard my laws and do them. I am Yahweh, who sets you apart. For everyone who curses his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother. His blood is on him. And a man who commits adultery with the wife of another man, who commits adultery with the wife of his neighbor, the adulterer and the adulteress shall certainly be put to death. And a man who lies with the wife of his father has uncovered the nakedness of his father. Both of them shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. And a man who lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall certainly be put to death. They have made confusion. Their blood is upon them. And a man who lies with a male as he lies with a woman, both of them have done an abomination. They shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. And a man who marries a woman and her mother, it is wickedness. They are burned with fire, both he and they, that there be no wickedness in your midst.
Amen. All right, Rabbi Tom's going to wrap this up. We'll get him up here. Okay, we'll give him a chance for get the camera reset on you. There we go. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us from verse 15 to the end of the chapter.
And the man who has intercourse with the beast, he shall certainly be put to death, and the beast you kill. And a woman who approaches any beast and mates with it, you shall kill the woman and the beast. They shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. And a man who takes his sister, his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, and sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, is it loving commitment? They shall be cut off before the eyes of their people. He has uncovered his sister's nakedness. He bears his crookedness. And a man who lies with a woman during her sickness and uncovers her nakedness, he has laid bare her flow, and she has uncovered the flow of her blood. Both of them shall be cut off from the midst of their people. Do not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, nor of your father's sister, for that is lying bare one's own flesh. They bear their crookedness. And a man who lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. They bear their sin. They die childless. And a man who takes his brother's wife, it is uncleanness. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They are childless. And you shall guard all my laws and all my right rulings and do them, so that the land where I am bringing you to dwell does not vomit you out. And you do not walk in the laws of the nation which I am driving before you, for they do all these, and therefore I loathed them. But I say to you, you are going to possess their land, and I myself give it to you to possess it, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am Yahweh, your Elohim, who has separated you from the peoples, and you shall make a distinction between clean beasts and unclean, and between clean birds and unclean, and do not make yourselves abominable by beast or by bird or whatever creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. And you shall be set apart to me, for I, Yahweh, am set apart, and have separated you from all the peoples to be mine. And a man or woman in whom there is a medium, or who are spiritists, shall certainly be put to death. They are to stone them with stones. Their blood is upon them.
Amen. Amen. All right, I want to thank all the readers. Excellent job. The blessing after the readings. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh your Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us the Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. All right. So, while you're getting your thoughts together, we're going to go over some announcements, and then we'll go ahead into the discussion portion of the evening. Okay, so first I want to welcome our guests. All right? I'm sure we have some guests online, and we may even have some people that are new here as well, so we just want to welcome everyone. After all, as children of Abraham, we should be exemplifying his reputation, his trait of hospitality that he was well known for. How many do we have on there right now, Grayson?
171 devices.
Okay, 171, that's right. Fantastic. And some of you may be new, and if you're new, we want to welcome you, and we also want to give you some ideas of we're going to let you know some of the things that are available to you that we provide that's for your edification and growth, hopefully, right? Okay, so first of all, we do stream every Saturday. On Saturdays, we have our service, Shabbat service, live here on YouTube from 1:15 until about 5:30. And so it actually goes on. YouTube starts streaming at 1, but we don't go live until quarter after. So the first 15 minutes will be clips from teachings or announcement slides with some music in the background, usually from my daughter and the praise team and that kind of thing. So 15 minutes of that, and then we go live with the sounding of the shofar at 1:15, and it goes till, like I said, about 5:30. And so you're all welcome to come and attend that as well. If you come here to visit, service obviously runs the same amount of time, but afterwards we also break bread together. We have a fellowship meal, and so you can come prepared for that. Okay, we also stream, as you can see right now, on Tuesdays. And that's our Torah Tuesday, Torah Study Tuesdays, and we start this at 6:30. So if you just found us, we started about a half an hour ago. And so that's every Tuesday, pretty much. And the same thing with the Shabbat. We have exceptions during feasts. Okay, during those 2 or 3 times a year when we have a big feast event, we may change the times to adjust to the feast. But otherwise, every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we do this Torah study. Now, we have a program for the children that goes along with this. In other words, it's a program that goes through the weekly Torah portion cycle, just like we're doing now. And it's at their level, though. This is designed for them. And by the way, I just preemptively, through the rest of the announcements, I want you to know I have no sales pitch here, okay? There will be nothing for me to ask you to buy or to purchase or go to our website or any of those things to buy anything. Everything we're talking about, we provide free for you to be blessed, hopefully, and to be useful to you. All right, so we have this thing called the Parsha Pearls program. It's for the children. It has its own website, ymtoi.org, Young Messianic Torah Observant Israel. So the letters ymtoi.org. And the Parsha Pearls program is, like I said, the weekly Torah portion cycle at the youth level. Now, we have 2 different programs there. And we have one called Gem Seekers, which is for the 5 through 8-year-olds. Another one called the Pearl Seekers, which is the 9 through 19 or 18, 19-year-olds. We often refer to them as Katan Aleph and Katan Bet and Gadol. Katan in Hebrew means small. I'm going to teach you a little Hebrew. Okay, Katan Aleph, the first letter of the alphabet, right? Katan A, and then Katan B, the older children. And then Gadol means big. And so that's our teenagers, because they're getting pretty big. And so this program is fantastic, and like I said, it's free. It's basically a PDF. Actually, there's 2 of them, one for each of those groups. Each PDF is about 35 or so pages, and it's filled with the following. Each week, you're going to get lesson from that Torah portion, questions, lesson questions, Hebrew word studies. So there'll be flashcards you can print out some of the Hebrew words from that week's Torah portion. Memory verses, word searches, crossword puzzles, mazes, crafts, notebook pages, coloring pages, even a song and a snack, and they're all Torah portion related, okay? There's no fluff stuck in there. I mean, everything here is going to be to help the children remember, learn, understand, and connect with the Torah portion in an enjoyable way. They're going to have a great time. They're going to love it. Some of you out there that are new may be wondering, I want to keep Shabbat, but my children, they're driving me crazy. I don't know what to do with them all day. Well, here you go, 35 pages worth of stuff. That'll keep them busy, okay? All right, fantastic. Okay, we also have audio scripture readings available on our website, and you got to hear a little sample today as Miss Shira read today. Okay, fantastic. All right, and so we have recorded on our site everything from Genesis to Revelation, and the first 5 books are recorded in the Torah portion order. So you can actually listen to the Torah portion section by section. It's on the MTOI.org website. Under media, under audio scripture readings. They're free and they're downloadable. All right, now, we also publish several days during the week on YouTube. So on Mondays, we publish what's called a first look, which is like a preview of the teaching that's going to be posted on Wednesday. So Monday is like a preview. So it's powerful sound bites from each of the week's full teachings that are about to post to kind of get your appetite excited for the teaching that's coming. Then on Wednesday, we publish the full teaching. And at this point, I think we're 2 or 3 parts behind as we're kind of keeping up with the program. So I think we're publishing part 14, okay, of Evil this week. So Evil is the series we're in. The teaching itself is not evil. It's about evil. Some of you may think it's evil, some of the things that have been going on the last couple of weeks, but that's neither here nor there. So that's on Wednesday, the full teaching post. And on Thursday, we have what's called the Afterburn. And that's the time after each teaching each week that we allow for comments and questions. And it also allows me to clarify some things that maybe I said that because of the comments and questions I realize may need more clarification, a little further clarification. So it's additional instruction in the same teaching that we just had. And so that's we publish that on Thursday. So the Thursday afterburn is from the Wednesday teaching. So they're connected, okay? Then on Fridays we publish an In Focus, which is a short video that focuses on topics that affect our relationship with our Elohim and with each other. And these are from bigger teachings, and each one that you watch will have a little note on there as to what teaching it came from. But they're like standalone segments. Sometimes they're little rabbi trails, we'll call them. But they're standalone segments that were a part of that teaching, but really they can just be pulled out by themselves and be valuable in themselves, okay? That way, when people ask, what teaching was it when you did this, this, or this? And I can say, well, here's the In Focus that just covers that one little piece, all right? Then on Thursdays we have a live interaction for our teenagers. It's called Torah Time for Teens. All right? Okay, now this is not on YouTube. This is on Zoom. It's hosted by our own Rabbi, Tom Mitchell. And so this is Thursdays in the afternoon at 1 o'clock. 1 in the afternoon. It's for teenagers, 13 through 19, from all over the world. We get about 25 to 30 or so teenagers that have been coming on a regular basis, and it's on Zoom. So Zoom is a sort of video conference software if you're not used to or familiar with this application, but it's free. We can send you the link. You click on the link, it just takes you right in. Now, Zoom, to get the link, just email us at torah@mtoi.org. torah@mtoi.org. It's an autoresponder. Now, we've had some issues in the past where it doesn't respond necessarily instantaneously. Depends on your internet, our internet, or whatever. So please get it in advance. Don't wait till 5 minutes to 1 and try to get the link, because then you might get frustrated with it not working and that kind of thing. It's an autoresponder, so you can do it at any point. It's the same link every week, so you don't have to do this every week. Okay, the same link works every week. Now, I do say this all the time just to make sure that we're being clear. This is for teenagers. Now, because it's a video chat, we will see if parents or adults or young children are on the screen. Please let's not do that. We want the teenagers to feel comfortable that they're interacting with teenagers. And the only adult in the room would be Rabbi Tom, who they seem to be very comfortable with, okay? He does a great job of developing rapport with those teenagers. So if you're a parent and you're concerned, well, I don't know if I'm going to trust what he's teaching, then be in the room off camera, okay? Because having an adult come in just basically cramps the style of the children feeling comfortable to be themselves and ask whatever questions and make comments that they want to do because they're afraid that you'll judge them on that, okay? And so let's not do that, okay? Now, so that's a fantastic program. We're really excited. Really, I'm surprised there's only 30 in there. There should be way more than that. If you are homeschooling your children, make it a part of the schedule, 1 o'clock Thursday. All right, and get them on there. Remind them to be on there. It's fantastic. All right, then we have what's called the zone meetings. Okay, so part of our mission statement is to provide for those that don't have. Okay, things like services, Torah studies, because they don't have a congregation locally. That's why we're doing what we're doing right now, right? We're doing this live on YouTube so that you can interact with us even if you're not here. And so we realized that the Shabbat is a very challenging thing if you live in a time zone where it's no longer Shabbat when we're doing our Shabbat. And we wanted to provide something when it's Shabbat where they are. And so we have what's called the zone meetings. The word zone is from the idea of it covers a span of time zones. So that's where I came up with calling it zones. So in zone 1 is the U.S., Canada, Mexico, South and Central America, the islands that are all within those time zones. And that meets on the first Saturday of the month. So this Shabbat coming up, okay, will be the Zone 1 meeting. All right, this Shabbat coming up is Zone 1. Now, so it's live during the teaching time that we normally would have during services. Okay, so it's on YouTube as part of our service. Now, the zone meetings, as I go through all 3 of them, are open and welcoming to everyone, no matter where you live. it's designed to be an international Shabbat Q&A. So it's really a time when people can ask me questions about almost anything scripturally. So like when we take the afterburn is about the teaching I just did. It's not about just anything, right? This is a chance to ask questions about whatever it is that you're challenged with your walk and your struggles with understanding the vertical, and how do we love him? How do we love each other? All those kind of questions that come up. And so we do that at these zone meetings. All right, now, as we go through the other zones, also understand that it's the people that live in the zone that get to ask the questions. So wherever you live, there's a zone where you can come to the meeting and ask questions. All right, so zone 1, first Saturday of the month. Zone 2, this is the second Saturday of the month. It's at 10 a.m. because we want to do it earlier in the morning so that it's still Shabbat where they are. Because this is the United Kingdom, Africa, Europe, places that are 5, 6, 7, 8 hours ahead of us. So at 10 in the morning, it's 3, 4 in the afternoon, 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon where they are. Okay, so they can then participate and it's still Shabbat. All right, this is on Zoom. The other one was on YouTube. This one's on Zoom. And the email you send us to get the link is zoom@mtoi.org. zoom@mtoi.org. And it auto-responds a link. And that link will be good for Zone 2 and Zone 3 every month as we go through this. All right, so then we have our Zone 3 meetings. Zone 3 is on the third Friday of the month, and that's at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's because this is Australia, New Zealand, Japan, the Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Fiji, China. It covers an awful lot of places that are 12 to 17 hours ahead of us. And so when I'm doing this on Shabbat at 1 in the afternoon, it is well already into Sunday where they are, okay? And so this would be still Shabbat where they are if we start 10 o'clock Friday night. And all are welcome. It's really exciting to see. We have over 100 computers logged on, usually from around the world, to see and meet other people from around the world. And also to realize, I think this is the coolest thing to me, they have the same questions you do. That's really encouraging to realize, hey, that person lives over in Zone 3 and they're struggling with the same thing I was struggling with. Or in Zone 2 or whatever. You get to realize you're not alone. Because somebody will ask a question you wanted to ask and say, oh, I'm glad they asked that. All right? I've had people schedule appointments with me only to cancel them because it came up on a zone meeting, got the answer in the zone meeting, they didn't need the appointment anymore. Okay? Because Abba wants he wants to get you those answers that you need. So he may cause somebody else to ask the question, but if you're not there, you'll miss the answer. So I want to encourage everybody to come if you can. They're very, very, very cool meetings to go to. I don't know if that's the right word to say about something of this nature, but I think they're really cool. To see people from around the world and to get to meet everybody, it's just fantastic. All right. If you have questions and we don't have your questions answered through the zones and other times when you can call, you can email us, okay? Go to our website, go to the Contact Us page and scroll down to the bottom of the page and there's a form you can fill out. Or you can email us at questions@mtoi.org, all right? And by the way, Rabbi Tom answers a lot of those, and I want to clap for that. He does a great job, okay? Because while I am not a writer, I'm a speaker, Rabbi Tom is quite a good writer. He's spent a lot of time in his career in writing and editing, and so he does a very good job in typing out and getting answers to people, okay? So that's fantastic. All right, now, the next thing I want to cover here is the Erev Shabbat Siddur service, okay? So the Erev Shabbat Siddur service, I don't know if you have that slide for that. I did move things around. We are changing that to be with Zone 3, the same night, okay? So it's once a month when we do Zone 3. So on the same Friday as the Zone 3, we'll come here at 8 o'clock after you eat dinner at home, and then we'll go ahead and have our Erev Shabbat Siddur service, and then we'll have our Zone 3 meeting, which you'll either run home to, or if you have a phone or something you want to try to log in while you're here, you can do that, okay? And we'll have the Zone 3. So that's our change in the Erev Shabbat service. All right. So we are in the middle of our Omer Count Challenge. Okay, what day are we in? 17 going into 18, okay? So as the sun goes down, so we're going 17 into 18 today. of the Omer account. So I hope you're being blessed with that as we're now studying what? What are we up to? Peace. Okay, so we're looking at peace and how. Now, some people have been asking, well, I'm not understanding what I'm supposed to do with each of these fruit of the Spirit aspects as we're going through the Zomer Account Challenge, which is the fruit of the Spirit, one a week, going through self, Yahweh, family, friends, co-workers, community, congregation, and then the ministry. It's how should that look and how can you achieve that in those things? In other words, now we're looking at peace. So how can you have peace within yourself? Then we go, how can you have peace between you and Yahweh? He doesn't need peace with you. You need to have peace with him. Although when you behave a certain way, you're acting as an enemy to him. Now, he has peace with that, but you don't. Okay? And then we have peace with our families, peace with our friends. And so it's about taking whatever that aspect of the fruit is and saying, what should this look like in that relationship? Okay? Love, joy, peace. Okay? The next one's going to be more tough, patience. All right? And so you should ask yourself, how can I be patient with myself? How can I be patient? Because you know what? Sometimes we get impatient with him. Or sometimes he puts us in places where he's expecting us to wait and wait and wait. And we have a hard time with that. So I think this is a great exercise. You should be looking at these the night before, right? Because it starts at night and goes the whole day. And then when you wake up in the morning, look at it again just to remind you what aspect you're kind of focusing on. I think it's a great challenge. It'll take us all the way to day 49, right before Shavuot, okay? Fantastic. All right, then, now let's get to our regularly scheduled things that are coming up. So on Friday, this Friday is our Erev Shabbat dinner, all right? Usually it's the first Friday of the month, so this is the first Friday in May 6th. And so we're going to have a fellowship meal, and we're going to have an Erev Shabbat service together with the family. We're starting at 7. Okay, the service will start at 7, so you can be here anytime between 6:30 and 7 and get yourself settled in and bring your food. We're going to do this like we do on Shabbat. Everybody brings their own food, maybe a little extra for some other people. And that will be Friday at 7. All right, then we have coming up our Mother's Day. Now, this is a new thing. Actually, I want to mention for the department leaders, this Saturday after services, the department heads only from the feast, we're having a meeting to go over post-feast review of all the things that we kind of learned from the event, okay? So don't forget to bring that with you. And if you are not a leader, but you were under a leader, okay, like an assistant to a leader or that kind of thing, make sure you get your information to that leader. Okay? So your leader can represent whatever it is you would like brought up at the meeting as well. All right, so then Mother's Day, if you don't have other plans or you'd like to have plans together with some of the family, we are planning to go up towards Benton Falls they have a beautiful little lake there, etc., and picnic area. So please let Rebitz and Julie know if you're planning to go so we can have sort of an idea who might be coming. And all are welcome. We're not planning anything. You got to bring your own food, bring your own everything. We're not doing something as an official event. This is an unofficial, hey, a bunch of families just want to get together and spend some time together doing Mother's Day, okay? And so you can come and do that. So make sure to bring drinks, food, whatever that you normally bring for a picnic out there. Also bring a few dollars, singles, because it's like, think $3 to park there. And they have little envelopes. You put your money in, and then you put it in a slot when you park. And they give you a little sticker, a little thing to stick on your dashboard. And so make sure to bring a few singles so you can do that. All right. Then we have our leadership meetings coming up on the 22nd. All right, May 22nd. The Leadership Council is meeting. That is the MTOI Worldwide Leadership, about 27 congregations represented. And so please pray for these meetings. Okay? I know I like to mention this every time, but, if you have any issues with the vertical, with the leadership, first of all, you should be talking to the leadership about it. But absolutely, even if you're not doing that, you should be praying about it, okay? Praying about your attitude about it, praying about the leadership. I mean, the problem could be in either side or both, and you should be praying for these leadership meetings, all right? Okay. Then on May 31st, that's our Rosh Chodesh for the month of Sivan. Okay, we just had our Rosh Chodesh last night. Now we got our next Rosh Chodesh. Okay? So that's on May 31st. That's going to be during the Torah study. That's a Tuesday. All right, we're going to do it during the Torah study. Probably right at the beginning or maybe at the break like we're doing now with the announcements, because sundown will be more than late enough for us to do that. Okay, then Shavuot is coming. All right, that's June 3rd through Monday, June 6th. So that's Friday through Monday. Sunday, the 5th, is Shavuot. So we're going to have an Erev Shabbat dinner on Friday night. We're going to have Shabbat services and meals together on Saturday if you decide to participate in those. And we're going to have a Holy Day service on Sunday and have meals for that. And then everybody will be going home. There won't be anything on Monday to do except pack up and leave. But we always extend the dates we put because we want to encourage you not to leave on a holy day or on a Shabbat. So as far as we're concerned, we're encouraging you that it's over on Monday. Now, if you wait until after sundown, late, Sunday night, that's fine. But some of you have a long way to go, so we would encourage you to plan to do that on Monday. Okay. To register, go to the MTOI.org/Shavuot page. Okay? We have a registration form there. We have a schedule of events there, and so you certainly can do that. And we have a new ability now where the form can be emailed. So if you go online and you fill out the form online on the page where you would total out and figure out what you owe and what you signed up for, there's a big bar there that says, click here to email the form. Okay, and it will email us the form. Okay, so you could do that. If you'd rather just print it out and fill it out and mail it in, you can do that. Just try to make sure that you know that someone has to read what you write. Marlene's good, but she's not that good, if you know what I'm saying. None of us are that good. Some of you write, and it's just like so hard to read. Write like you know somebody actually has to decipher it, okay? Some of you write your checks that way, too. And the scanner scans it, and it's like I have no idea how much money this check is for. All right. Okay, so please write it knowing someone has to read it. All right, so that's Shavuot. We're real excited about that. We're going to have a really great double Sabbath weekend between the Sabbath and the Holy Day, and it's going to be awesome. All right. I think that's going to cover it for the announcements. And so now we're going to go ahead and go into our midrash, or our discussion portion of the evening. So let me preemptively say a few things before we start taking comments and questions. This whole section here, especially chapters 19 and 20, really 18 through 20, is a section that in the past, I have notes here from May 5th, which is almost the same date, right? It's close. May 5th, 2001. That's my notes when I was teaching this back in those days. And I called it expounding on the Ten Commandments. Okay, expanding on or expounding on the Ten Commandments. And so it's also where the do not do as they do come from to a certain degree. Okay, there's a lot of do not do this and do not do that and don't do what they're doing. All right? So there's a lot of do not do as they do in there as well. And so I want us to understand that in chapter 18 through 20, most of it's in 19 and 20, a little bit's in 18, you actually have all 10 commandments mentioned. Actually, that's not true. One is not mentioned at all, not directly. Okay, only one commandment of the 10 is not mentioned, and that's the coveting commandment. And my guess is the reason it's not mentioned is because it's the reason for all the other breaking. You coveted, you wanted, which is why you did idolatry or adultery or murder or stealing or whatever, okay? Because you wanted something and you were not supposed to have it, or somebody wouldn't let you have it. And so there's not a single verse about coveting in there, but all of the verses are really about that, okay? So it's really interesting. I'm going to go over some of this with you before we start taking the questions. So what's the first commandment? I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Okay, so the first commandment is I am Yahweh, not like you learned in church, okay? The first commandment is I am Yahweh. The second commandment is idolatry, and it covers you shall have no others before me, you shall not make idols. That's all one commandment, okay? But the first commandment is to recognize who he is. So the statement I am Yahweh appears 24 times in 18, 19, and 20. He says it, though, in those chapters, almost like a parent saying, because I said so. So he'll say, do this, don't do that, do, and then he'll say, because I am Yahweh. In other words, because I have the authority to tell you this. So it's like an exclamation point after every 3 or 4 verses about do this and don't do that, he throws in an I am Yahweh. So you don't forget who's giving you the instruction, the weight behind that, okay? 24 times in 3 chapters. Most of it's in chapter 19, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. 9 of them are in the other 2 chapters. 15 of them are just in chapter 19, okay? I mean, look at chapter 19 real quickly here. Okay? Verse 2, be set apart, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am set apart. Verse 3, it finishes with I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Verse 4, I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Verse 10 finishes with I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Verse 12, I am Yahweh. Verse 13, I am Yahweh. You see, everywhere. He wants you to understand that more than anything else, because if you don't understand that, the rest of it doesn't work. Can we all understand that and agree? You've got to know who he is, who you are, and the nature of that relationship. And the big part is, you are not him. I know that sounds simple, but sometimes you act like you think you're him because you're going to decide for yourself and you're going to usurp that authority. And he's trying to say, no, I have the authority. These are my right rulings. These are my judgments. These are my Torah instructions. They're not yours. You're covenanted with me, then they become your responsibility to guard, keep, and do. All right. The second commandment, idolatry. Chapter 19, verses 4 through 8 covers that. And so we see that covered there. It says, do not turn to idols, etc., etc. Then the third commandment, bringing Yahweh's name to nothing. That's what it means when it says, you shall not take his name in vain. Okay, when you do something that's vain, what does it mean? That it's worthless. It ends up not bearing any fruit. It's a waste of time. So you don't want to bring his name to be a waste of time, to have no value. So he's telling us in this chapter, let's look at we'll go back to chapter 18 first and look at verse 21, just because this is one of those chapter 18 ones. It says, and do not give any of your offspring to pass through to Molech, and do not profane the name of Yahweh your Elohim. So he's trying to tell us that doing things is how you bring the name to nothing. Look at 19 and verse 12. And do not swear falsely by my name and so profane the name of Yahweh your Elohim. So it's not about, the Jewish community has this one wrong. Most of the Messianic, especially the sacred namers, have this thing wrong. The third commandment has nothing to do with how you pronounce the name or whether or not you say the name. Because the Jews won't even say the name because they're afraid to say it, because they're so afraid to break this commandment. This commandment has nothing to do with what you say in terms of using his name. It has a lot to do with what you say if what you're saying is breaking Torah in some way. In other words, you represent yourself to be, because he's talking to the children of Israel, right? Verse 1 says, speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel, chapter 19, right? You who are going to represent me among all the nations, what you do is going to show them who and what I am correctly or very badly. In the mikveh declarations, when you go to get baptized within the way we do it here at MTOI, you make 8 declarations. The 8th declaration is a declaration to walk out your life in such a way as to bring the names of Yahweh and Yeshua glory and honor and not shame. In other words, really, it's once you make those commitments publicly that you're really at risk of breaking the third commandment more than ever before. Because you're now committing to not do that, to not break the third commandment. So what you do breaks the third commandment, not how you pronounce the name or whether you say the name. I don't think it's a lot of sacred namers all bent up into a pretzel. I'm sorry, but it's just not what it says. What you want isn't there. Okay, this is what we see. And so chapter 19 and 18 is great because you see the application of it. He says, don't do this and don't do that, because if you do, it makes my name mean nothing. It profanes my name. And that's what the third commandment's all about, right? Not profaning his name, his reputation, his authority. Go back to the no other name teaching, right? When he uses the word name, he's referring to reputation, authority, identity as who he is. And when we walk in a certain way with people that don't know him, they're going to assume that we represent him the way he is. And so whatever you do, you're going to either bring him glory and honor or shame. So you should be really concerned about how you walk. Because do we all know that everybody's watching you? You are under a microscope. All your friends, everybody you've told about this walk, and especially when you told them, oh, I can't do that because it breaks something. Then they're going to be watching you. Okay, let's see how serious you are. You won't do this? Well, what about other things? And as soon as you show yourself to be a hypocrite, it's over. Your friends will look at you like you are so full of it. To be blunt. You know? You're going to make a stand. You better make that stand always. Be consistent. All right, fourth commandment. What's the fourth commandment? Shabbat. All right. It was mentioned in 19:3, right? Each one of you should fear his mother and his father and guard my Sabbaths. By the way, that was also the fifth commandment in the same verse. Okay? And then verse 30 of chapter 19, it says, guard my Sabbaths and reverence my set-apart place. I'm Yahweh. All right, so Shabbat is mentioned. Then we have the fifth commandment, honor mother and father. We just read 19:3 covers that, and also chapter 20 and verse 9. For everyone who curses his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother, his blood is on him. So he's taking the commandments, the 10 commandments, and he's expanding on them and expounding on them to some degree. Sixth commandment. By the way, if you don't know all the commandments, there's 10 of them, not 613. Yes, we could look at 600, but there's 10 big ones that you should know in order. You should know there are only 10. Some of you should be kicking yourself thinking, you know what, I've known these commandments my whole life and I still don't know them in the right order. But you should know them. There's 10 of them. All right. So, what we up to? Commandment 6, murder. Chapter 19, verse 17. Do not hate your brother in your heart, reprove your neighbor for certain, and bear no sin because of him. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then so you can see where he's telling you, don't do this, don't take vengeance. But he's now giving you a little bit more detail. He's saying, look, don't hate your brother. Murder, and then he turns it into don't hate. That sounds familiar, like in Matthew, where Yeshua is saying, you've heard of old not to murder, and I'm telling you not to hate your brother, not to be wroth with your brother. Yeshua's quoting right out of here. Nothing new with that. Seventh commandment, adultery. Okay, chapter 18 and verse 20. And do not have intercourse with the wife of your neighbor to defile yourself with her. Chapter 20 and verse 10. And a man who commits adultery with the wife of another man who commits adultery with the wife of his neighbor, the adulterer and the adulteress shall certainly be put to death. And it goes on and continues with more of that in verse 11 and 12, and again in verse 14. So we have details of what it looks like, not just do not commit adultery. Okay? We're now seeing things that would qualify as and be in the same category. What forms could it take? All right? Let's see. The eighth commandment, stealing. Chapter 19 and verse 11. Stealing. Do not steal. Do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another. Actually, we covered a couple of commandments in there, okay? Do not steal. So he just comes straight out and says, do not steal. Now, if you look at verse 13, you get a sense of what it's talking about. Like, he says, do not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of him who was hired is not to remain with you all night. So he's giving you more details of how we can steal. And you can flip that the other side. If you're the worker, we're told that you should get an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. Well, if you don't put an honest day's work in, so you're stealing from your boss if you're sitting on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or something when you're supposed to be working. Or if you're on personal calls or some other thing when you're supposed to be working. That's stealing. Let's see. And verse 36 also covers that. Let's see what that says here. Have right scales, right weights, a right ephah, a right hin. When you're doing business and you weigh things out. Don't cheat the customers. Don't cheat people out of things because your scales are not right and your weights are not right. Ninth commandment, False witness. So we saw in 19:11 that was covered where it says, do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another. Now, the main thing with the commandment is not to say something that's not true that causes harm to another. So you're a false witness. You're saying something as a witness against somebody. The verse doesn't actually say, do not lie in the commandment itself. The lying is connected to causing harm. Okay? Suffering, pain, evil. In other words, doing evil, like in the evil teaching we've been talking about. So like when you lie to protect someone, that's different. It's not breaking any commandment. Okay, when the Jews were hiding in German houses or other parts of Europe and the people said, no, there's nobody here, and they were hiding them, that was protective misrepresentations of the truth. It's a careful line you have to be careful with. I'm not trying to, children, this is not permission to misrepresent the truth. Because parents get mad at me. Oh, my children were listening to you, Rabbi. Now we have a problem. No. We're talking about under the consequence of somebody really having harm and you're trying to protect them. Okay? Now. Then, of course, the 10th commandment, which is coveting. We know that that doesn't exist in here in a specific, direct way. Now, of course, there's a few other things that come up in this section. One is the verse that says, love your neighbor as yourself. So let's remember that this is not a New Testament idea, okay? You see this in the end of verse 18, all right? Verse 18, it says, and you shall love, chapter 19, 18, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. It's right there, straightforward, okay? Now, there are more expanding on this, like chapter 19, verses 9 and 10. When you reap the harvest of your land, don't completely reap the corners, but leave the gleanings of your harvest. Do not glean from your vineyard, but leave these things for the poor. That's loving your neighbor, okay? And verses 14 and 15, don't curse the deaf or cause a stumbling block before the blind, but fear your Elohim. Do no unrighteousness in right ruling. Don't be partial or to the poor or favor the great, etc. These are all things that are absolutely still loving your neighbor. Verse 32, rise up before the gray-headed. We have a real societal problem, cultural problem, respecting our elders. Elders meaning those older than us. You know? It's a terrible problem. And you know, I find it's, and also people for their position. So if you're watching right now, I'm going to say something to really encourage you as to something that you, as a problem. Because people will call here and they'll ask for Steve. And Marlene will say, Steve who? Do you mean Rabbi Steve? Now I get that some of you struggle with the title. Now I did a teaching, a little in focus, that you can watch that explains why the title is not a problem. Oh, but in Matthew 23, I explain Matthew 23. Now, that being said, if you do have a problem, then Mr. Berkson will work, because I think I've earned the respect. You don't know me well enough to call me Steve. Okay? The only one who can do that is my wife in this room, okay? Nobody else knows me well enough to call me just Steve. And actually, if we go through the Jewish form, the only people that are referred to just by their first names are even higher than rabbis. They're called sages. And they're referred to like Rashi and Maimonides. And these are people that are referred to by their first names. And that's a whole, Hillel and Shammai. And so, at least show respect. You don't want to use the term rabbi? Fine, don't. But call me Mr. Berkson then. Although I'm not comfortable with that myself. Nobody calls me that really. But hey, if you want to do that, I feel that's a lot better. It makes me cringe when people just call me Steve, because I know they have not that level of respect yet. And it almost always plays out to be true. Okay, the people that don't call me by a title or with that kind of respect almost always end up being a problem on some level. Okay? It's way too casual. You don't call, when you go to the doctor or dentist, your doctor by their first name. You call them doctor or Dr. So-and-so. We've lost that. I think my generation was like one of the first generations losing that, because I remember thinking as a kid that it was kind of odd that this one guy in my third grade class always said sir and ma'am, because we had already stopped doing that, where the generation before always did that. Sir and ma'am. We don't respect the older folks. Our children don't. We certainly don't. That's where they're learning it from. And so here it is. It's a commandment. It says, rise up before the gray-headed. And rise up doesn't necessarily mean stand. It means show respect and honor to someone more, hopefully wise and experienced than you, who's just walked in the room. And who's lived a life that deserves some respect, hopefully. Okay? Now, some of you are thinking, I know an awful lot of older people that are just awful. I get that. But we're being told to show respect and honor the gray-headed. Now, that's within the body here is what it's specifically talking about. He's talking about the children of Israel. And so we can at least do that and show respect. Respect doesn't mean that you do everything someone with gray hair tells you to do. It means that you treat them respectfully. You can disagree respectfully. I've got a lot of adults that have a problem with the fifth commandment. They go, it says honor mother and father. It says my mother gets in my face and tells me I'm not honoring her. I said, no, she's in your face because you're not obeying her. It doesn't say obey your mother and father. It says honor. So if you're going to not obey because you're now a full-fledged adult with your own family, you have to find a way to tell mom no, or to create a boundary that you do in a respectful way, which isn't easy to do sometimes with family members. Okay? But you have to try to be honoring the fact that that's your mother or your father. But again, it doesn't mean that you then submit to their authority, because once you become an adult and you have your own family, you're no longer under their authority, but that's still the people that gave birth to you. You exist because of them. That deserves something. Okay? All right. Let's see. The other big issue that comes up in here is incest, homosexuality, and bestiality, and all that kind of just sexual craziness. And so just understand that these are the verses that explain how Yahweh feels about it. He's not feeling that way about the individual that may be struggling with these things. Look, there's a lot of people that are off and struggle with all kinds of appropriate behaviors, not just sexual ones. And so we have to understand that there are people that really do struggle. And we've actually had several that we've helped over the years who have struggled with homosexuality and other challenges, even some bestiality, believe it or not. Okay? And we've had to counsel and help people through some of these challenges. And so just to understand that we don't hate the person with the struggle, but we should look at what they're doing as an abomination, meaning it's something you should not want to do. Not that you look at them as an abomination. That you're sick, you're an abomination. No, you're doing something that's an abomination. And maybe you should pray that they will come out of that. Maybe they won't want to run away from you because you look at them so disgustedly. Maybe they'll come to you and look to help, look for help and advice, and then you can send them my way and I can help them. But if you make them feel as awful and dirty as you're looking at them, why would they ever come and seek anything? Why would they want to come to seek Yahweh and his people for anything if they're just going to be looked at like they're the most disgusting, wretched thing that you've ever seen? That's not going to happen. Now, I got a couple more things here. Just want to make sure what I wanted to say. Okay, so this came up during the Torah portion, but it also came up during the last Torah portion, I think, and Rabbi Tom was doing it, and the question came up about the uncovering the nakedness in the story of Noah. Okay? This section here is one of several sections that talks about uncovering the nakedness of so-and-so. It is very clear from this section that it's talking about sexual interaction with the person, not just the fact that you're seeing them unclothed. The verses are very clear about that it's a sexual interaction, not just seeing them uncovered. Okay? Look what it says in verse 19. Do not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, nor your father's sister, for that is laying bare one's own flesh. They bear their crookedness. It says, the man who lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. He lied with his wife and uncovered his nakedness. So the first verse, it just makes it sound like they might have been naked, but now we're getting more clarity here. Okay? And a man who takes his brother's wife, it is his uncleanness. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. So, when you have sexual interaction, this is more incest related, with those that are family in some level, that is uncovering somebody's nakedness, so to speak. In other words, that's not yours to have. Okay? Your sister is not yours to have. Your mother-in-law. Actually, there was one verse I didn't even know it had to be there. Why would anybody marry their mother-in-law and the whatever? I mean, it says there, a man who marries, the mother and the sister. I don't know. I was like, really? That just, no. All right. But this is one of those things that when you read this, you have to understand that the uncovering the nakedness is a sexual act. It's not just a unclothed. So, Noah is drunk. He goes and lays down. His son walks in and sees Noah's wife, which was not his mother, was not the son's mother. It doesn't ever refer to it being his mother. It's just this is Noah's wife at the time. And from it being the uncovering of his father's nakedness, this was his father's nakedness. It says that they saw their father's nakedness, which means they had sexual relationships with his wife. This was the sin. Trust me, generationally, men and women didn't have that big a deal about getting naked. There were bathhouses throughout generations and centuries in different countries where people got naked. Men often, even when I remember growing up, you went to like the gym or something. They had just a giant bathroom full of shower heads, and men just got in there. So it wasn't about nakedness. I'm sure that Noah and his boys had seen each other naked. It wasn't about the physically seeing an unclothed body. And so they go in with a blanket to cover her up because she's the one that was the deal. And so when the boy comes out, he's all bragging, hey, you want to turn? They're drunk and you can go in and have at it. That is sick. That is perversion. That is a gross thing. That makes more sense why the cursing comes and why Yahweh's so not happy with what happened with Noah, with his boys. All right? Because this was a sexual interaction. And the only reason we know that, though, this is the beauty of Scripture, is because when we read it here and again in Deuteronomy, when it goes through these uncovering the nakedness of the so-and-so and uncovering, that we understand, oh, it's talking about a sexual interaction. Now I get what Noah was talking about. You can't always go with the literal. There are idiomatic phrases. Look, you don't even realize how many you use every day, idiomatic phrases. You say things, other people know exactly what you mean, but it isn't literal what you're saying. But you use phrases all the time that are not literal. Like you say, wow, that beats the blank out of me. Really? Somebody's beating the blank out of you? I mean, A person came up to me one time, I'm as lost as a ball in the tall grass. I said, what? I came from New York. That's a southern term, apparently, so. Because he said it with a thick accent, too. It's like, I'm as lost as a ball in the tall grass. I said, I didn't understand a word you said. So apparently this uncovering the nakedness was an idiomatic phrase used for this kind of sexual relationship with family members. Okay? And that's forbidden. That's something that goes against Scripture. And so I just wanted to get that because that comes out a lot here in chapter 20, okay? Just wanted to make sure I covered that. All right, now we'll open up the floor for questions on anything that I commented on or didn't cover. And so Grayson will mark down the ones from online if you want to come up over here. We have a mic right here. You can come up. Taylor was waiting to see whether it was Janet or Steve that got up first, so she was just kind of waiting as you guys. All right, Steve, go ahead, lead us off.
Okay. It said in 19:3, each of you shall fear. So I would hope that you could explain in which meaning the word fear, because in my day, to fear my parents was I was going to get my butt whipped because of something I did or didn't do. So can you put the fear in the right context for us?
I would say that you're going to use fear in the same context, but diminished a little bit, that I gave you in the fear of Yahweh teaching. Having an appropriate level of awe and respect for being your parents. Okay, and because of that fear, you would not treat them a certain way because it would be inappropriate to treat them a certain way. All right? Does that help? Okay, Taylor?
Okay, hi, Rabbi. Okay, so I've had this question for a long time, and I'm just going to ask it, but it's kind of like, when you mentioned the incest, homosexuality, and bestiality, like a while ago when I was younger, I always used to study people who were sort of different when it came to like their hormones and things that changed their body and made them look a certain way. And I always wondered, like with homosexuality, I obviously know in my mind like that's bad and shouldn't happen, but I never knew why like humans, like women especially, had the ability to look masculine naturally or have deep voices or, you know, have that part of them. And I remember hearing like women would come and be like, okay, I already like have the shape and look of a man. I'm just gonna go over here and be that since I don't embody a female. So I would, if you could just give me like a different thought process. I never understood why women could look like that and then it not be okay.
All right, so first of all, you know, the way people are developed, in other words, when the egg and sperm come together and everything's starting to divide and split and all that kind of stuff, there's all kinds of possibilities of what you're going to look like that come from both the mother and the father to whatever percent that is, okay? And so, you know, you could have, generationally, you could have, you know, if you have a even slightly masculine-looking woman with a masculine man, and then that next generation may get a more masculine look. I mean, it's the way that whole thing kind of works that way. Now, bear in mind, though, there are people out there, and this is not anything bad, there are people out there that are women that really like feminine-looking men, and there are men that like masculine-looking women. And so you also have the same problem on the other side, Taylor, which is you have a lot of men that are pretty, if you understand what I'm saying. I mean, they just look like almost like girls, okay? And so, but I know there are some women that are like, wow, he's so good looking, and I'm like, he almost looks like a girl, but that some women like that, okay? And then there are other men who are like, man, that woman is something, and then it's like, looks like a guy almost. But that's, you know, there's somebody for everybody, okay? But let's understand, I don't know, and I don't understand what makes that piece work that way. I've never had that problem, so I don't understand it. That doesn't mean that I should judge it. I should have any issue with it from that point of view. But understand this. There are things that sometimes go sideways and haywire when you have people that are born handicapped with physical handicaps, with emotional handicaps, with psychological handicaps. There should be no surprise that the sexual orientation can get to be one of those things that goes sideways too. That doesn't make it any more right. Look, there are people that are off in the head, and you know what they do? They steal, they murder, they do all kinds of things. That doesn't make it right, but you could make the same argument, well, they are just being what they are, that you make for someone who starts going after the same gender. And so it's a bad argument path, okay? It's a bad line of thinking. Because look at people that are really, you know, social, they're psychotic in that social way. The ones who go out there and do these really socially inappropriate things like, you know, shooting up schools and all these other things. Well, it made sense to them where they were, and it's the way their wiring was, so we should just let them be, don't judge them. That's really the same idea, right? And so what is a blessing is when I can meet with someone who's gone down that path and starts to realize, I know that's where my head seems to go, but I also recognize that it's wrong. And I want help. Okay? You don't have to just embrace that you're pulled in a direction, because that direction may not be a good one. All right? You know, there are, I was going to say men, but I'll say men and women. There are men and women that are players. They are just of a mindset where they're just not interested in being with one. Doesn't matter if they're married or not. And they're going to go out there and, because that's, their head is in that place. And until they recognize the wiring is wrong, they're going to think that that's just normal. And in certain cultures, it's normal. In this world, it's almost becoming normal. And so, do we look at them the same way and say, well, we need to excuse all that because it's just the way they're wired? Because not everybody's wired that way. Not everybody just wants to go out and do all that. A lot of us would never have done all that, whether we knew it was Torah or not, to not do it. It just wouldn't have been in our wiring to do all that. And so we have to be careful that, yes, we can recognize that people have challenges in the way they came into the world and developed. Some of it is hard to explain why the wiring is that way. Some of it could be through nature. Some of it could be through nurture. I mean, I have known some women that had some really, really, really awful men in their lives and just decided to give up on men just because it was awful. That's more of a nurture, right? It's a situation where life kind of pushed them in that direction. They didn't start off in that direction. And others start off, and they're kind of that way, kind of like from the beginning. Like you said, you can meet some of the women out there, and they look and sound like a man, or some of the men that look and sound like women. Something in the development put them in that place. But that still doesn't make things right or wrong, just because it is. And so Scripture is going to give us the right and wrong part, okay? Because the people that are sleeping with animals or having sex with animals, they think that's right and they desire it. So we're going to just decide that's okay because that's what their wiring is? No. But we're not going to judge them. They need help to deal with that fact that they're wired. Look, some of you have no problem with anger. Others have tons of problems with it. Some of you never really get depressed. Some of you are depressed all the time. You didn't choose that. And so if I were to tell you to get help for your depression issues, your anxiety issues, why wouldn't you get help for your sexual preference issues? Because first you have to recognize that it's actually a problem. Until you recognize it as a problem, why would you ever address it? So the world is now adjusting to the people with the problem to make the problem not a problem. That doesn't fix anything. And so we need to understand the beauty of the Scripture because Yahweh is so strong about this for one basic, simple reason. The sex that's described here that you're not supposed to do, the one, not the family member ones, but the man with a man, a woman with a woman, or with animals, if that were prevalent, there would be no people. See, that would sexually extinguish the human race. We would just not exist. We'd go into extinction. Because a man and a man isn't making a baby, and a woman isn't making a baby, and then nothing with an animal is making a baby. Okay? And if it did, well, I don't even want to know what that looks like. And so it's straightforward, basic biology. It's not about I identify as this or that. If the world all identified in those ways, we would not exist in another 100 years because we would stop reproducing. You can't make a baby that way. Oh, no, people say, oh, no, we would just save people's sperm and their eggs, and we do this and we do that. Look, if you want to put a sperm and egg together, do it the right way. There is a mechanism designed to make that happen. And it's quite fun, too. Yahweh wants you to want to do that. The test tube thing isn't fun for anybody. Okay? Just being blunt. Look, he didn't have to make that act pleasurable, right? As a matter of fact, he didn't have to make it the highest level of pleasurable. I mean, there's the highest level of pleasure a person can have is an orgasm, pretty much, short of drugs or some other weird thing. I mean, it's the highest level of stimulation, joy that you can feel. Why would that be connected to sex? Because he wants you to reproduce. And so since it doesn't happen just after one shot necessarily, unless you're 15 and you shouldn't, somehow they always catch that ovulation, those 15-year-olds. But he's going to want you to keep doing it till you get the baby, and then do it. And then the baby, having the baby is so miserable, why would you ever want to do that again? Well, because it was so much pleasure, you want to do it again. And so it's just sort of logical for us to understand this, right? And so this is a really good thing to kind of talk about, because nobody wants to talk about it. You know, Christians in the mainstream want to really just attack brutally those who have gender issues and sexual, preference issues and things. And I have absolute complete peace that that's their issue, and if they seek help, I'd be happy to help them. I don't judge them. I don't have any issue with what they're doing. Okay, what I don't like is when they're trying to push it on us. Don't push it on my children. Don't push it on anybody. Okay? If I were to be pushing myself on girls, like let's say I was a teenager, then they would have a problem with me pushing that. But yet somehow we're pushing that whole preference and sexual identity thing on our children, which shouldn't be done. Certainly not by, public institutions like school systems and things. All right? Shouldn't be done. I think the safest, most appropriate way, not always, there are some abusive relationships in families, is for a parent to teach a child about the birds and the bees, so to speak, right? That should come from a parent who's picking the right timing when that child is able to comprehend and understand those concepts correctly. Not for an arbitrary thing that the school system decides to teach their way of understanding all that stuff. And this is a problem. This is a big problem we have in society. So any of you out there that are watching that have any of those issues, you are welcome here, as long as you're not here to promote that. But if you're here to get help, if you're here to seek fitting in and overcoming what your challenges are, please contact us. We'll help you. And we have people here that have already gone through that journey that we'd happy to talk to you, who actually, I don't know what that journey's like, but we have people here that would be very happy to talk to you that do, that have been on that side and now have figured out how to come out of that place, okay? And so I think all of us need to make sure that we're not going into that nasty, mean-spirited judgment of those that are different than us. Because I really believe that most of them didn't choose it. Okay? They didn't choose it. They're confused. Most of them don't know which way to choose because they kind of feel both, at least to some degree, before they make some sort of a choice. And so let's be available to them and not judge them. Amen? Amen. All right. All right, Janet.
Rabbi, thank you for all that. So I wanted to ask you about a few things here. When it says, rise up before the gray-headed, I know you talk a little bit about that. It might be just my own bias, but I come from a different culture. I was raised in Peru, a very traditional culture, and when the children approach their parents or the friend's parents, they're never, ever, we'll call them by their first name. So will that be also like, do you say that if somebody is a child approaching an older person or an adult, would you say that they should use something before that name, or?
Yeah, there should be, Mr., even if they like the first name, there are those that were, before we started using Rebbitzin, we would call my wife Miss Julie, okay? Or some of the other teachers, Miss Sarah Beth or Miss, that's fine, okay? And there's a group in Canada that we used to work with a little bit that they were taught from more of the Mennonite sort of background, You know, that anybody, I think, that was like 20 years older than you, that always gets to have the Mr. or something in front of it. So they always called me Mr. Steve. And I was okay with that, all right? They weren't going to call me Rabbi, but they always called me Mr. Steve. And, you know, it's a showing, it's an effort to show respect, okay? Now that I am gray-headed, though, some people interpret the verse as, rise up against the gray-headed. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. All right.
Rabbi, verse 31, 1931, when it says, do not seek after spiritists to be defiled by them.
Right.
Is that connected to the commandment about idolatry? Or which commandment is it connected to?
It's probably connected to the first two commandments. Look, first of all, it says, do not turn to mediums. Extra large and large are okay, though. But do not turn to mediums. Sorry. There's a lot of verses about seeking counsel in the wrong place, seeking solutions in the wrong place. That's what this whole witchcraft, medium, spiritist thing is all about. So if you go to other sources, you're breaking the first commandment that he is Yahweh. In other words, he is the source. He's where all your answers come from. And the second one, idolatry, because you're going through something pagan, usually to get that kind of thing going on, okay? And so that pops out in a lot of places throughout here. All right, throughout here. Actually, I realized I had about 10 more things I could have covered, but we'll let you guys go, and then I have more things that fit into the same part of the chapter I just saw. But go ahead.
I just love when in 34, when he talks about the stranger, let the stranger who dwells among you be to you as a native among you. I just identify that so much with that because I'm literally not from the U.S., but I've been here for so long, and I've just been received always very well by the native here. And I like that it says in here, for you were strangers in the land of Mizraim, so it makes me think, well, I have something in common with the Israelites at the time, which is cool.
And the stranger is referring exactly to that, which in other words, it's not someone who's just a stranger passing through. It's the stranger who's not born a part of the tribes, who's now decided to become part of the tribes, or is in the process as like a proselyte and deciding to become a part of the tribes. This would be the ger, in the Hebrew ger, all right? And so he's saying that that person should be treated like they're a native. But it also tells the ger, you're expected to behave like a native. The same Torah applies to both. There's one law for both the ger, the stranger, and the native. Okay?
And in verse 27, is that...
Did I say you could ask 15 questions? How did that happen?
The last one, can I ask one more?
Go ahead, one more.
Verse 27.
Actually, I'm going to deal with 27 in a minute.
Oh, you will cover 27?
I'll cover that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Next.
Mine was about 27.
Okay, and then after Ashley, we'll go to the live stream, but I had a bunch that I could preemptively probably strike, and we'll get to those.
Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom.
Sorry for me stomping out. You hit a trigger on me, so I apologize. For 19, my question is for 23, 24, and 25. When it says to circumcise the fruit, can that be reworded as pruning?
No, it's not talking about circumcising literally. It's saying that it's like it's uncircumcised, meaning that it's not covenanted, so you can't have it. It's just another way of phrasing something that's not covenanted yet. So it's saying treat the fruit as uncircumcised. In other words, not for you.
Okay.
Okay?
So we wait until the 5th year to eat?
So it says for 3 years it's uncircumcised. In the 4th year, all its fruit is set apart. In the 5th year, you eat it. Okay?
Okay.
Now, that's only the first cycle through the 7 years, okay, through that first cycle. After that, then starting year 5, it's yours, except for the 7-year cycle where on the 7th year you let the land rest, okay? But in the first set of 7 years, these are the rules. Okay. All right. I'm wondering if I should just preemptively handle some of the questions with what I was going to say or let you go. You're nodding at me like I should do that. All right, so let me hit a few things here that might cover some things in advance. All right, now, chapter 19 and verse 22. For all of you that don't understand, who are still coming from a New Testament Christian point of view, it says here, the priest shall make atonement for him with a ram of the guilt offering before Yahweh. What is he doing? He's doing an offering at the temple, right? He says, for his sin which he had done. So this is about sin. And guess what it says? And the sin which he has sinned shall be forgiven. There was forgiveness of sin before Yeshua died through the sacrificial system. Interesting. So in case any of your friends are struggling with that whole idea, well, before Yeshua, there was no forgiveness of sin. Well, I don't know. Leviticus 19 disagrees with you. And by the way, that's not the only place it says that. There's lots of places that say that. In Leviticus alone, there's lots of places that say that. All right? So just kind of keep that in mind there. Now, what Yeshua did is what the sacrifices can't do, which is to wash the stain out of you that the sin caused. Because you're stained even though you were forgiven. And you still deserve death even though your sin was forgiven. There's still a judgment for what you did. And so understand, the sin can be forgiven, and yet there's still a bigger picture of all of this. And Yeshua then does what this can't do. But there still was forgiveness of sin, so that you can continue to function in the community after you went through that process. All right, now let's look at the verse that Janet was asking about, 1927. Okay, it says, do not round the corner of your head, nor destroy the corner of your beard. Okay, so this is, I believe, in the same context as when we're talking about the priests and the magicians and stuff of other cultures. Because look at what, it says here in verse 26, don't eat meat or meat with blood, but do not practice divination and magic. Do not round the corners of your beard. Then it talks about not making cuttings in your flesh. We'll talk about that in a minute. And tattoos. Then it talks about profaning your daughter and making her a whore, which will explain what that means. And then we go back to 31, where it talks about mediums and spiritists, etc. again. So a lot of this is dealing with don't do as they do. And so they would do certain things to their body as part of their quote-unquote spiritual behavior. Tattooings, carvings, they would do their hair and their head a certain way, okay? And so he's saying, look, don't round the corners of your head. It kind of looks like a Catholic monk, the bowl thing. Don't round that all up. And yet that's exactly what they do. And it says, it doesn't say anything, by the way, about having a beard or not. It says if you have a beard, don't destroy the corners, whatever that means. That could be making cuttings in it. That could be taking the corners away into the thing like in Egypt. I don't know how I can turn my head. They had those long beards that came this way, right? They had those long cone beards, okay? And so this is saying don't do like they do. Now let's understand, because I've had this verse thrown in my face in years past when I didn't always have a beard on. See, a lot of you saw me at a few videos in some years back where I didn't have a beard, but I used to do that almost every year. I would have a beard from Sukkot until Passover, and then I would shave it until Sukkot. Because in the summer, it was much easier and cooler not to have a beard on, right? But then people would come to me and say, oh, you came here to speak and everything. Where's your beard? I said, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Where's your seat? I don't hear. Your lack of seat is making me have a hearing problem. Anyway, because there's almost always somebody without seat on that's picking on my beard. I said the seat command is very clear. This is not a command to wear a beard. There's no command to wear a beard. And not everybody can, by the way. I know lots of men that cannot grow a beard. They can try, and they end up with like 5 or 6 whiskers here and a little patch there and something. They can't do it. And Yahweh wouldn't ask you to do something you can't do. But he's saying, if you do, don't do this to your beard. Okay? And so let's keep that in mind. Now, there are then those that would ask the question about, when it talks about the corners of the beard, the idea of a goatee or a Van Dyke where you kind of just have this part. I don't think that's it either. I think it has to do with more the idea of doing something to mark the corners in some way, or doing this more tubular thing off the chin and that kind of stuff. I think it's trying to look like the spiritists of the time. Okay? Or they would put things in them and beads and this, and that might be destroying the corners of the... I don't know. We don't really know what this means. But it's not, I'm going to get to that next. Okay, it's not about, just shaving. It didn't say that, because it talks about shaving quite a bit in Leviticus. Okay? If you do this or that, then you have to shave off the hair, you have to shave this, So shaving is mentioned many times. It says destroy the corners. So they're doing something that destroys the corners of the beard. So I don't think mostly anything that you guys are doing grooming-wise qualifies as that, okay? All right? No, you don't need to have a beard. And if you have one, you probably don't have anything that you could possibly do to destroy the corners, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. All right? So mine I usually keep fairly close. I've tried to let it grow. Wife doesn't like it. I'm like a happy wife, so, we keep it close. And I just want you to know that if it was commanded, she would be okay, and so would I. Okay, so I wouldn't just, because I'm trying to please her. But she understands, and I understand, it's a preference. Okay? And I prefer not to have to argue with people over the beard, so I like having it. Because I got tired of it. It was so much of a distraction to people. It's like so foolish that that's a distraction to you. So anyway. All right, now. Then we have the tattoos. Okay? Now let's understand the context here. It could be one of two things. It says, don't make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, this is verse 28, nor put tattoo marks on you. It could be that the tattoos are connected to the dead. In other words, you're not going to put an image of somebody that died or a child or a loved one or something on your body. Okay. But you know what? There's a lot of verses that are not in the same sentence, it seems, connected to the same things. Like where it says, verse 26, don't eat meat with the blood. And then it says, don't practice divination or magic. Those are not necessarily connected. Okay? And so I would say tattoos in general are something you should not get. Now, if you have one, please don't stress about it. Every one of us did things before we knew better. And we can't go back and undo them. Now, not all of them leave permanent marks. Some of the things we did. And so you have those things that you now live with. Now, if you want to have it removed, that's up to you. I would not worry about it, okay? Just don't get any more. That would put you in the most conservative, safe place as far as this verse is concerned. All right? Now, there are some of you that wanted to get a tattoo removed because you just wanted it removed anyway because it says things you don't want to have on your body anymore. Or somebody you're not interested in anymore because you were dumb enough to put a man or a woman's name on your body. The things that we do are so foolish, okay? Especially when we're under the influence of something. But that being said, you did that before you were told or instructed. Don't fall into guilt. Don't beat yourself up about it. Do something about it or don't, but have peace with that. Just don't get any more. All right? Which is funny because I remember reading this out loud, and then a couple of weeks later or months later, somebody in the congregation showed up with a giant tattoo on their back. A daughter of basically someone was almost essentially like an elder. I'm thinking, of course, to his credit, they did it without telling him. So I can't really get mad at him. It's unwise. Okay, did that answer the question you were kind of looking for? And Gerardo, I know you pointed. Oh yeah, I'll point that out. Okay, so when it comes to the not rounding the corners of the head and not destroying the corners of the beard, this is why the Jews have what's called payas. The payas is the curls on the side. They leave that hair to grow almost forever just because they don't want to break the commandment the way they understand it. Of course, it makes them look, especially some of the guys, it makes them look like girls. I mean, it almost has this curly, sort of feminine sort of look to it. It's just, I don't know. It certainly sets them apart, which I know they like to do, with the black suits and the black hats and the curls and the whole thing, but I don't think that's what the verse is talking about. Okay, I don't think that's what it's talking about. All right. In chapter 20 and verse 2, okay? Chapter 20 and verse 2. Talks about offering our offspring, our children, to Molech. I've interpreted this several different ways over the years. Let's just take the literal first. What did it actually mean to offer your children to Molech? They literally took the children and threw them in a fire. They killed them. So clearly this is something we're not doing today, all right? We're not offering our children to Molech. Some people want to try and turn abortion into that. That's not it. That's just murder. I'm not going to say it's just, but it's a different problem. Okay? But is it offering your children through another religious sort of idea, like submitting to a religious practice of another organization when you submit your children into these other things? When you bring them to church, when you know that they shouldn't be in church, they should be in something like this. When you bring them to, you put them in a Christian school, which of course they're going to learn the doctrines and positions of that school. Now, I know some of you end up in Christian colleges, and that's a little bit tougher, but you're an adult now, and you should be able to handle it better than, say, the child who's 8, 9, 10 years old in a Christian school. I have a sister-in-law who put her daughter in an Adventist school and then was getting frustrated when her daughter started sounding Adventist. I said, what do you expect? You put her in an Adventist school. That's what she's going to learn to become, an Adventist. What else is going to happen? My children were in the Chabad for preschool for just a little while, and guess what? I got them out before they really started to sound like a Chabad. They were starting, though, a little bit, because that's what you're going to learn and receive that sort of indoctrination, whether you want it or not, from wherever you go. You can't help it. That's why public school system is so scary, because they're indoctrinating your children. Some of it you may actually want them to be indoctrinated, and some of it's good, and some of it's not. But they're learning from a source that they're being told they should trust. And religious-wise, that's the same problem. You start bringing, because some of you out there are watching right now, and you're going to a congregation because you want fellowship so bad, you're willing to ignore the fact that the place you're going is not good. Not good meaning scripturally sound. But you want to be with people, and especially your heart goes out to your children, and there's children there, and you want your children to be with other children, and I get it. But they're going to come out of there learning that stuff. And then you're going to tell them at home that you don't agree with that stuff, and they're going to wonder why you go then. Because that's what you're sharing with them. This isn't an easy thing to do. This is an easy choice to make. But what are you teaching your children? Is that, in a sense, offering them to a false system? And by the way, false system, the more it looks like the truth, the worse it is, not the better it is. Do you understand that? The closer to the truth it is, the more dangerous it is. Because the differences are so much more subtle or smaller that you think, well, it's okay, a little poison is not going to kill me. The obvious big difference ones, those are easy for you to say, no, not interested. And so this is the challenge. This is really the challenge. And so I don't know if that's what it means here, modern day, what it would look like, but he's telling us not to offer our children up. All right, okay, this goes back to the mediums and spiritists. Verse 6 also talks about it, like Janet was asking. I have a question, though. Okay, and I think I answered it, but I just want to ask you this question. Why? Why are they going to these people? Why is this happening? It says, a being who turns to mediums and spiritists to go whoring after them, I shall set my face against them, that being, and cut them off. Why are they doing this? I understand why he's saying not to do it, because if you're doing it, then this could then filter back into the rest of the body who'll start doing it. And so they need to be cut off and separated out. But why are they doing it? Any thoughts? Why? To feel powerful? Maybe. I doubt that's the reason, though. To get answers. Okay, so are they wanting answers? I think it could be one of two types. Are they looking for answers because they're not getting them from wherever they were going? Maybe. Or maybe they just don't like the answers they're getting and they're going someplace they'll get the answers they like. So I think that's the important question, is why? Because a lot of you are thinking, I would never do this. Well, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. And if you don't understand why they're doing it, if you ever felt the way they felt, you might do what they did. Why are they doing it? Either, or a combination, right? Either because they're not getting answers, and they're not being patient to wait for them, or they don't like the answers they're getting, and they're trying to find someone to give them the answers that they want. Someone who's going to tell them what they want to hear. And so they go to the spiritists, and the spiritists want money. And so the spiritists are going to say anything you want to hear. Okay? You go get your cards read or the crystal ball or whatever nonsense people do these days, they're going to tell you things you want to hear. So they keep coming back. Because you want answers. Okay, so let's be careful of the cause, right? I'm a big dig underneath to figure out what the real problem is, not the symptom. The symptom of the problem is going to spiritists and mediums. The problem is your inability to deal with the answers you're getting or the patience needed to wait for answers. And in your impatience or in your not liking the answers, you may seek after them. And by the way, this doesn't mean necessarily spiritists and mediums. That same problem, well, I mean, the verse means that, but if you have that problem, might you not go to other ministries that are not spiritists and mediums, but you're looking for somebody to give you the answers, information you want? You don't like my answers, so now you're going to go answer fishing, basically. You're going to go fish for answers wherever you want to go. You're chasing after someone to tell you that what you want is okay to have. All right? Or just make up an answer to something there really isn't an answer for. I talked to somebody today, and I had to tell her very, with a lot of empathy and sympathy that I'm sorry, but those answers don't come that quickly, and you have to be patient. Whatever it was about, I had to say, look, and the person was like, that's not fair. I say it is hard to not have answers. But sometimes the answer is you have to wait. It is what it is, right? And then if you don't like that, you may go looking for answers somewhere else. So if you can't get the answers here, you may go find answers in another religion. You may go find answers in a different congregation that's kind of in a mixed mess with some other religion, or mixed in with some form of Christianity or Judaism that's a mess. So let's be careful with that. Does it make sense? All right. Let's see. Verse 10 in chapter 20, when it talks about the man committing adultery, the man and the woman are to be together, brought and put to death. This is a reference to this is a helpful verse to understand what's really going on in John 8 when they're talking about the woman caught in adultery. Okay, there are a lot of issues with that situation. Go listen to, I think we have an In Focus on that, or many places where I talked about a woman caught in adultery, okay, so that you can understand what's really going on there. It's not about forgiving her and being merciful and grace like the church teaches, okay? It's about Torah. And according to Torah, they needed to bring her and him together. That didn't happen. According to Torah, they needed to bring them to the priest or the judge. That didn't happen because Yeshua was neither of those at that time. So they brought her to the wrong person, and they brought her by herself. And so Yeshua busted them and said, there's another piece of Torah, guys. It's called the witnesses who witnessed this get to throw the first stone. See, that's not in this section here, but it is in another section where that law is talked about in Deuteronomy, I believe. And so when he says whoever is a, and by the way, if you're a bad witness, Torah says we get to stone you instead if you're a false witness. So when he said whichever one of you is a true witness is what he said. They said whichever of you is without sin. That's a bad translation of saying whichever one of you is a true witness in this matter, you get to throw the first stone. He already knew they were all lying. That's why they all dropped their rocks and walked away. Right? So you need verses like this to understand what was going on in John. You cannot understand your New Testament. If you're listening to me right now and you've really not read the Old and haven't anybody teach you the Old, you do not understand your New Testament. As much as you think you know it, you read it, you memorized it, you have no idea what it says. You don't know. I'm not being condescending. I'm not being, prideful and ego or whatever. You can't understand anything to the proper degree that Yeshua or anybody else in the New Testament says if you don't understand the Old. Because all of it is grounded in what is taught in the Old. And without that understanding, you will get everything that happens in the New wrong. You'll read it wrong, understand it wrong, interpret it wrong, as John 8 is interpreted by all Christians as, look at his mercy. This woman broke the law and he forgave her and they didn't kill her. Nonsense. That would have been breaking the law. He didn't break the law. But they're already showing, Christianity wants to show that this is him already usurping the Father's authority and deciding to change the law. That did not happen. It never happened. As a matter of fact, that woman probably did nothing. That's why she just stood there. Because in that society, a man took a woman and said, look, you come here, you stand there, and you don't move or we're going to kill you. That's why even when they left, she didn't move. Don't you think a guilty woman, as soon as they left, she would have ran? Right? But she just stood there. She didn't know what to do because she was told to stand. That's my understanding of it. It's my opinion. And so she did what she was told. Stand there and be quiet and don't move. Until he finally told her she could go. If she had really done it, and you know Messiah would have known if she had really done it, he would have brought her to the right authorities and found the man and the whole thing. Because that would have been Torah. Okay? He probably was writing that in the dirt. I know Christianity wants to tell you he was writing their sins in the dirt. That would have been Lashon Hara and against Torah. It would have been against Torah to write their sins in the dirt in a public setting. He was probably writing Leviticus 20, verse 10, and Deuteronomy, where it talks about the stoning and the false witness. And he probably was writing out all those things. And the guys up front, the older guys are looking, going, oh, man, he got us again. Checkmate, you know? Nobody could checkmate faster and better than Yeshua. Every time they came at him, they were coming at him with a feather when he was coming out with a bludgeon. He was ready to handle anything. And it was an unfair fight from the beginning, as we all know. But they tried. They tried over and over again. All right, now we can go to you on the live stream because I did cover everything I wanted to cover. So hopefully that handled some of your questions.
From Anna Uden, verse 3, is this verse talking to children?
Verse 3 of which chapter? Oh, in chapter
19.
I think it's talking to everybody. Because if you never learned to do it as a child, you still need to learn to do it. Okay?
From Rocky Mosley, chapter 19, verse 2, we are to be set apart from what self? Put to death the flesh.
Okay, so he wants us, and again, I maybe have to do a teaching one day. I wrote it in my notes to actually do a teaching on being set apart. Okay, it's called Be Set Apart, and I'll have to write it here at some point. But let's understand that it's always in the context of being set apart as I am set apart. That's what he says usually. And that means that you behave in a way that's of the above and not of the below. So you're setting yourself apart from the ways of the flesh and the worldly, the earthly, the fleshly, the below. That's the idea of set apart. Set apart in the Hebrew kadosh has the idea of being set apart or put aside for the singular purpose of being of use to the Father. That he has a purpose for you and you're only to be used for that purpose. So you can't do the things that the world purposes. And so he's trying to tell you through all these things, the world uses unequal weights and measures. The world does all these other things, and you're not to do them. The world has all kinds of sexual issues and incest issues and all this other stuff. You're not to do them. You are to be set apart. Okay? I've separated you from all the other nations for a purpose. All right, next.
2 questions for verse 14. First from Miss Romana. Rabbi, could you please expound on do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind, but fear your Elohim, I am Yahweh. Expound on what is a stumbling block with example, please and thank you. And from Call.
Leave that one because that one's on screen. I can see it.
Okay.
I like that you guys can put that on the screen now for me. Awesome. All right. So this is a verse I should have had in my notes to expand on, and I'm sorry that I didn't do that. The obvious literal, sort of Peshat understanding is very simple. Why would you curse the deaf person? They can't hear you anyway. And why would you put a stumbling block in front of a blind person because they can't see it? But I think it's not talking about deaf people and blind people physically. Okay? Don't curse those that can't hear, because Abba hasn't given them ears to hear. Don't put stumbling blocks in front of people who can't see, just because they weren't given eyes to see. But fear Yahweh. In other words, it's my problem, Yahweh says, not yours. Does that make more sense? Okay? All right, next, give me the rest of her thing. You said there was another one from somebody else?
You answered the other question.
Oh, there you go. Good.
From Maisie Hill, Rabbi, can you please expound on Vayikra verse 16, where Yahweh says, do not stand against the blood of your neighbor? Thank you.
Okay, it says, do not go slandering among your people, do not stand against the blood of your neighbor. Okay, so again, I think this is another way idiomatically of talking about being a false witness. All right? Do not stand against that neighbor in a false witness way. The slandering way, it's kind of, this verse I think is both things are connected together. Okay? Next.
From Patty, can you explain the difference between Leviticus 19 verse 20, where no one dies, versus chapter 20 verse 10, where they're slain?
Give me a second, I'm just looking at the two. Okay, I'm going to answer this in a way that some of you aren't going to like, because it's going to require some patience. We are going to have a sex teaching at some point. In other words, to understand that different relationships sexually have different ramifications and they're labeled differently. So what you have in chapter 20 and verse 10 is the label called adultery gets death. All right? But adultery is only a specific type of sexual interaction between very specific status people, in other words, married people. And so what you see happening in 19 and verse 20 says, when a man has intercourse with a woman who is a female servant, engaged to a man but has not been ransomed or redeemed, there should be an inquiry, but they are not put to death. In other words, she's not free. There are rules about your interaction with a female slave. That rules would be different if she had been married. Being engaged is not quite married, and because she was not yet redeemed or ransomed. So there's more to this that's connected to other stuff that comes up in, let's see. We're going to get that after we'll go back to Exodus 21 probably is where this is going to be. Yeah, in 21 when it starts talking about rules about slaves and things, Exodus 21. So, but let's understand, there's very specific rules. If a man is out there with wherever and he finds a maiden who's not married to anybody, and they decide to have sex together, that's one status. If he takes her against her will, that's a different status. If she's married, it's a different status. If they're both married, it's a different status. So there's a lot of confusion to this because there's no one place that explains all of those things. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so apparently, I'm getting more and more of this. Oh, no, I can't go there. Because it's like when I said that it's not sin when you're not in covenant. It's just wrong. And that really bothered everybody. Because sin is a label for breaking Torah in a covenanted relationship. So if you commit adultery and you're not in covenant, it's still wrong. It's just not sin. Sin is a label for someone in covenant doing something. You commit murder, you steal, and you're not in covenant, it's still wrong. It's not sin. And we're going to get to that after we finish the evil teaching. Or maybe I'll do one of these other ones in the middle, just because I'm kind of interested. I wrote 2 or 3 things down that I might want to cover. Now, but that being said, adultery is a label for sexual interaction, and it's a label for the married person. Not necessarily for the single person. So it's only when a married person and a married person, then they're both called adulterers. So if I, as a married person, have sex with you and you're single, I'm committing adultery. You may be committing something else. It's still wrong. Okay? Why am I bringing this out? Because, I really didn't have a good answer when we did the divorce teaching for what porneo is. And porneo isn't pornography, but we think, porneo sounds like pornography. But the Greek porneo is some sexual interaction that is not appropriate. And people think that it's talking about adultery. No, adultery gets death. Porneo gets being put away. So porneo may be sexual interaction with someone that's not married, even though you're married. And so there's some other parts to this that doesn't necessarily get death, but gets a different marking. Again, it gets complicated. It does not in any way weaken how wrong it is to do these things. I'm not diminishing that. Please don't think that. But I recently was struggling with some of these things as they were coming up in conversations. I actually talked to some of the leadership and said, hey, I'd like you guys to be looking at this so we can come up with a teaching to explain this, because there's got to be a reason why when Judah had gone to his daughter-in-law as pretending to be a prostitute, that he never, ever gets in trouble for having sex with a prostitute. That seems very weird. So there seems to be certain things that have certain ramifications and rules about it that are different depending on who's doing it and how it's doing. Okay? And so this is critical. Look, when Dinah and Shechem, okay? Dinah was not married to Shechem. They were having sexual relations. No, she was not raped. Okay, even though the Jews insist that. But if you read the story, she was in love with him, he was in love with her, and they got carried away. And she still stays with him after this is all found out, and the brothers don't bring her away from his house until after they kill everybody. But yet, this isn't treated with a stoning offense. Normally in Scripture, the thing would be now you have to get married. You should have done it first, but now you're pretty much are being required to do that. Of course, Jacob was like, but you're not circumcised, so we don't do that. So now we got a whole different problem. Okay? So this whole sexual thing is not so simple in terms of what the consequences are, but it's very clear that things are wrong to do. Does that make sense? Okay? And so it's really a problem with labeling the thing that's happening. So that's a good question that was asked, and I was wishing you hadn't, because I have a teaching that I would like to do that would come up with that. But I gave you kind of my thoughts at the moment, so you can kind of see where this is playing out. It's an excellent question. I mean, this man is having sex with this woman, but she's a servant who has not been yet redeemed or freed, as opposed to the man and woman committing adultery, which means they were both married. Different labeling, different consequences. When you have a man and a woman who are both married, they have two households getting wrecked. Okay? So, anyway. So I think we've really never had anybody really, I've never heard anybody really teach about this to kind of really literally flesh out, this whole subject, so that we can understand it more clearly. All right? So it's a really good question. I appreciate the question. So that's on my list here of teachings to possibly do. One called Be Set Apart, and now this one on understanding, labeling sexual relations correctly, What? Sex 101. No, I don't think so. It'll get a lot of views, though. I'm actually going to write that down as Sex 101. That won't be the name of it. It probably will be. Okay, never mind. Anyway. Let's go back out here. Chris. See, we got all this time because it's such a short reading.
Okay. I had a question, but before that, when you talked about forgiveness in chapter 19 and verse 22, so I know with your teaching you talk about forgiveness, resolution, reconciliation, and restoration. Would that kind of forgiveness be the resolution part?
Oh, when it talked about the offering forgiving sin? Yeah, I mean, it created a reconciling and restitution between you and Yahweh, where you can now still have a relationship. It doesn't take away the fact that you still earn death ultimately. Yeshua was going to come and fix that eventually. Didn't matter when he came. He was going to come and fix that eventually. At least make it possible so that could be fixed, right? But yes, it was a reconciling. When you were in a status called sin, you were cut off. You did the offerings. It forgave the sin so that you can now be reconciled. Well said.
Okay, and the restoration, the last part would be what Yeshua did?
Well, no, this still restored the relationship so that you can now continue doing temple service, be his people, and all those kind of things. So it did both reconciliation and restoration at the same time.
Okay.
Okay?
And my question on chapter 19, verse 17, I read the two parts of the verse together, but I'm not understanding it. So it says, do not hate your brother in your heart, reprove your neighbor for certain, and bear no sin because of him. So I'm not understanding how instead of hating him, you're supposed to reprove him, or I'm not sure.
Okay, so you're frustrated with something your neighbor's doing. You're having an issue. He says, you can go and sit there and say to your neighbor, hey, listen, neighbor, you're messing me up with this thing you're doing. But you can do it without hating him. And then, because if you hate him, you may take action. You want to, have justice. You want to balance the scales or whatever it is, so you'll do something back to your neighbor. Okay, maybe your neighbor's animal's been on your property eating your vegetables or doing some other thing, and you need to go over and correct and reprove that neighbor, or you can do something to take your own action to try to balance that, get your own pound of flesh. He's saying if you do that, you're going to be in sin. He says don't do that. Avoid sin. Reprove your neighbor. Reprove doesn't mean that you go and correct them like from a point of authority. Just go and have a conversation and say, listen, I've got a problem that you may not be aware of, but you're causing some challenges for me. What your animal's doing, what you're doing, whatever your children are doing, something is causing me a problem. He's saying go have a conversation. The word reproof comes in there, but it really has to do with have a conversation that's meant to make something stop happening, to change what's happening. Okay? To inspire change. All right. But realize that if you don't, it says that you can then lose your temper, get angry, do something you shouldn't, and then you can end up in sin. Okay? All right, Justin.
All right, can I ask two questions, Rabbi?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, first off,
That's 5 less than Janet, so it's okay.
I'd rather ask permission than forgiveness.
That's good. I've had too many people say they'd rather ask forgiveness than get permission, so I appreciate that.
Chapter 20, verse 7 and 8, and I know you talked a little bit about the set apart, and you mentioned you're going to do a teaching, but I was just wondering with him saying that we are to set ourselves apart and shall be set apart, for he is Yahweh our Elohim. And then it says that I am Yahweh who sets us apart. So as we come into this and he reveals himself and Yeshua reveals the Father to us and basically our bubbles pop, so to say, is it almost an obligation to now, since he has set us apart, to try to set ourselves apart?
Yes. But also, I'm just thinking about it as you're reading it, he's done this in 2 ways, all right? He has literally set you apart, like he's chosen you, separated you in a sense, but also Yahweh being your Elohim is something that sets you apart from people that don't have him as their Elohim. So just that alone makes you different and sets you apart. Now, of course, if you don't act like it, then you're not really setting him apart. Okay, then you're profaning the name and doing the other things it says not to do in that same area. Okay? What else?
Okay, and then it kind of off different subject. He's talking about uncovering people's nakednesses. And it talks about a brother with his man who takes his brother's wife. Now, that's in the context that the brother's still alive, correct? Because I know that typically, yes, okay.
Yes.
Not that I want my...
No, because if the woman's husband dies, she's now free. Okay? All right. All right. Is it Sean?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so one question was Leviticus 19:19 about livestock breeding with another kind. Does that mean don't own a mule?
You know what? I don't really know what to do with that because you do have donkeys, in Scripture. And so you're going to get mules or donkeys based on breeding. And so I don't know, what to do with that. I mean, I think it's really talking about animals that are not, designed for that. So I don't have livestock, so I don't know what to say about that really. But donkeys actually are praised very nicely in Scripture. Okay?
And then the two threads, is that specifically wool and linen, or is that any kind of threads? I didn't write the verse for that one.
Well, in Deuteronomy, when it covers it, it's specifically talking about wool and linen. So you can wear, a mixed blend of different types of cloth. That's not a problem. The wool and linen thing, first of all, is much more specific to the priest, okay? And they were supposed to wear linen for what they were doing. And the wool and the linen, if we go on to a more physics point of view, the vibrational frequency of linen and wool cancel each other out, and you lose the value. They're both very high vibrationally valuable types of cloth, but when you put them together, you lose all the value. Okay? So I would say that it's specifically still talking about wool and linen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And my last question was, so kind of tied to Justin's with the brother and the wife. Also, does that apply like or equally with, like say the brother divorces the brother's wife? Is this prohibition just when they're married? So if it is, even though, if the person's still alive, but there's a divorce, that's what I wanted clarity on too.
I'm trying not to make a joke out of this somehow. But, I mean, look, if you're ending up having the hots for your sister-in-law and then she's now divorced from your brother, I think you need some more counseling. All right. I think we should stay away from all interaction with people that were related to us on any way at any point. Okay? I think that would be a really good advice. All right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And by the way, think of what that must have been like from a Matthew point of view. When Yeshua was talking about, where it says of old about adultery, and it says, but to lust after the woman. If you're going to marry your sister-in-law after your brother's not married to her, then you've already been thinking about this, and you've already had a problem while they were married. You didn't just all of a sudden have a light bulb go on the minute they got divorced. So that's, that's problematic, in itself. Okay. Let me go back to the live stream. Otherwise, I got Steve and Janet looking for round 2 over here. So let me go back to the live stream.
From Anna Uden, verse 13.
Oh, sure. So Anna gets in for round 2. There you go.
This is
wait till she moves here and gets in the same line with these two. All right.
This is not, okay, so in regards to chapter 13, this is not always possible. Is this one of the verses that can't be done today? Please expound on this, Rabbi.
Chapter what?
Chapter 19, verse 13.
Okay. The way this verse is, what it's trying to say is, and actually you're not asking me, you're asking Rabu. Who's Rabu? Anyway, I'm just reading the way she typed it on the screen. Please expound on this, Rabu. The point of these verses is always the point, not necessarily the literal, right? In those days, you would pay wages to people on a daily basis. Now we get paid on a weekly or bi-weekly or whatever we're getting paid. The point is, pay as you agreed to pay. So it says this is not always possible. Well, it is possible today. Okay, there are people that get paid, day worker, so they get paid every day. Okay, there are also people that get paid monthly, weekly, twice a month, whatever it is. The whole point is pay your workers when they expect it and as you obligated yourself. So now we do things a little differently than back in those days, but the point is, I know people that have had jobs where they have gone weeks and weeks where they just didn't get paid, and the boss made excuses and they didn't get paid, and that's really tough. That's really tough. So we can do this today. In other words, if I hire you and I tell you I'm going to pay you every week or every 2 weeks, you should get paid exactly as we agreed. And that would be this verse, okay? All right, next. Question for Rabu.
From Pete and Brenda, chapter 19,
Only my
verse
wife
11.
can call me that. It sounds like sort of an affection thing.
Is this a duplicate of the commandments in Exodus, or is the context here about not defrauding others in the community?
I'm sorry. Give me a second to read that again because we're all laughing. I just picture my wife going, "Hey, Rabu," you know. I mean, I just, you know. It's a good thing the camera's not on you. Okay. As we were talking about in Leviticus 19 and verse 11. Give me a second.
Is this a duplicate of the commandments in Exodus, or is the context here about not defrauding others in the community?
No, I mean, all of this is a repeat of everything that's in Exodus. I mean, he repeats everything that he says everywhere. He repeats it somewhere because he wants to make the emphasis when he's trying to make a point. So the point he's making here is he's saying, okay, look, you guys here, listen. All of this stuff that I said in Exodus, it still plays out here. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail of situations of how it can play out, ways that these commandments can have issue or be broken. And so in some places, it's very much more straightforward. He says, don't lie, don't steal, don't bear false witness. But then he goes into more details of what that looks like. Oppressing the neighbor, not paying wages correctly, unequal weights and measures. I mean, so it's not just saying it, but there's more expounding on it that happens here. Okay, next.
Comment/question from Anna Kaufman. Maybe we can apply chapter 19, verse 23 to our walk. We are metaphorically called trees in scriptures when we feel like Yah reveals something to us in his word.
Certainly, Scripture does give us a sense of using agriculture for all things about us as well. There's a verse that says that when the person who Yeshua healed his eyes and he could see, he saw men like trees walking. Okay, so we're referred to in that way as trees. Psalm 1 talks about, blessed is the man who shall be planted as a tree by the waters, okay? And so this is the man who doesn't walk astray or sit in the seat of scorn, but he'll be like a tree planted, right? So, yes, I can see that. And, of course, he's using the circumcision metaphor, which is for people, to the plants and to the trees. So, yes, you can certainly do that.
From Pamela Shuford for chapter 19, verses 23 through 25. Can we plant trees that are 3 years old from nurseries and count to the 5th year, or does it mean from the time you plant it?
Look, I don't know how to apply this in terms of literally putting things into place. We don't live in the land, which is really what this was for. It was for the land. We don't have the Shemitah cycle clearly in hand as to what year we are in the cycle. But it's talking about here those that are planted. I mean, when they came into the land, they were supposed to do all of this with trees that had already existed for years and years and years. Just to go through this cycle and understand the pattern of these things. I mean, I know people that have bought a property that already had trees on it and did this, and they said they couldn't believe the amount of fruit that it started to bear when they did it this way. So certainly I would say it probably doesn't matter, but you can choose to just know that they're 3 years old. You don't know what was done with them for those 3 years, though. But it's 3 years old, and you could start that count all over again, or you can just take it from year 4. We're not in the land, so it's not, jurisdictionally, it's not that required from that point of view. But certainly you can learn lessons from the application. All right, what else?
From Diane Hogue, could you please expound on chapter 19, verse 32, rise up before the gray-headed? Thank you.
I did that one already. Okay, next. And by the way, give Grayson some patience because, you know, he's listening to me and reading people's stuff and not always clear what gets covered.
So from James Strickland, chapter 19, 9 through 10, like an incidental encounter with a person in need that we can fulfill easily, like buying a meal, etc.?
No. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying that's not what this is talking about. Okay, this is talking about loving your neighbors who are living there amongst you in a community and leaving the field for those to come. And they would come on a regular basis. You see this play out in the book of Ruth, okay? And so this is part of everyday understood community support. It wasn't one of those more random incidents, that you may encounter. Now, if you do encounter, somebody that's in need of a meal, you got to also ask the question, am I helping or am I enabling? What is going on really? Does this person, are they making any effort to fix their problem, or is this just a really short-term problem? So if you're giving them a meal isn't actually fixing anything, then it may not be the thing for you to do. I'm not trying to sound cold-hearted or anything else. But you know what? Unless they have, let me rephrase that. If they have a serious mental health issue, then they should be able to go get help and get plenty of food and everything from people that take care of people with mental health issues. If they're able-bodied, there's a ton of empty jobs out there that anybody could get at every fast food restaurant on the planet. They'll get free food and they'll get a job and make some money. So if they're on the street, okay, they either are in need of mental health help and somebody needs to bring them there, not to get them a meal, but to bring them to help, or they're lazy and they need to get a job, okay? But you know what? If they're able to stand on the street corner and write a sign as badly as they write them so that you'll give them some money, they could work anywhere, okay? There's a reason they're not, and we don't know what that reason is. I'm not judging them, but are you helping them really? Oh, but they're hungry, and they'll be hungry again in 4 hours. Are you going to come back and get them another one? I mean, what are you going to do? And do they really want food, or they just want money to get whatever they really want to get? Because I've tried to say, fine, go over here, I'll get you a meal, and they don't want that. And so we have to be careful with that. All right. Let's come out here, Steve.
All right, I was trying to understand where it talked about bringing you in to dwell so the land doesn't vomit you out. Is that meaning that you abuse the land to the point where it doesn't produce so you have to leave?
No. What he's talking about is, if you don't do what I say, I'm not going to let you stay here. Okay? By the way, as a parent, if you have teenagers, you may have had that same conversation. If you can't behave in this house, I'm going to vomit you out. All right? And that's not being mean. That's something they need to hear. They need to hear that once you turn 18, you're only here because I want you to be here and you want to be here. If I get to the point where I don't want you to be here, you don't need to be here. So you better figure out how to make sure I want you to be here. I'm all for letting my kids stay as long as they want. But, my son who's now 18, I had that conversation, and he understands, and he's respectful of that. But I said, just so you know, I am under no obligation to you whatsoever at this point as far as the world is concerned. You're 18. I'd love you. I want you to be here. Those who see me with my son, we're very close. But I also want him to know that I expect that you're going to behave in a way that I'm going to be glad you're here. And he does, okay? But that's a conversation that needs to be had. And so the land is the same thing. I'm going to bring you into the land, and if you don't behave appropriately in the land, I'm going to have the land vomit you out. Now, the land didn't vomit him out. He sent Babylon to take him. He sent Assyria to take him. But essentially, they were not going to have the land anymore. All right? All right, next.
All right, and the other thing in 24, it talks about hiding our eyes from what somebody was doing. Is there a way we should apply that to our walk today in seeing what somebody else may be doing? Maybe not judging it, but not allowing us to be a part of that, or no?
Okay, first of all, let's understand again, when it comes to legal things, okay, so doing something to somebody who's breaking the law requires legal things like jurisdiction, judges, all those kind of things. And so in the community called Israel, in the land, if you saw somebody offering their child to Molech, you were supposed to deal with it a certain way. Okay, we're not in that jurisdiction under those parameters, there's nothing we can really do except bring it to the leadership's attention and maybe they could do something, okay? But we can't, it's like the verse that says, to take out the child that's acting rebellious and stone them. Well, you can't do that now. We don't have the jurisdiction, the land, and all of the other things necessary to do that. Because, I know it's funny. I know a lot of you probably have heard when you said that you're keeping the law now, they go, oh, what are you going to start stoning people now? I always say the same thing. I said, sure, I think we should start with you. Give him a big smile. No, I said, look, that's just dumb. That would be breaking the law. I can't do that. I keep the law. What do you mean? The law says about stoning people. Yes, and according to that law, we need to be in the land with judges and priests and all these other things that we don't have. So no, we're not stoning anybody. Okay? All right, Janet?
Rabbi, I have 2 questions. Is that okay? Thank you.
Is that okay? That's like half of what I expected.
1916. Can you help me understand the meaning of slandering compared to Lashon Hara, please?
Well, they're similar, okay? Lashon Hara just covers more. Slandering is a form of Lashon Hara, okay? So slandering is spreading things that are not true about somebody, okay? Lashon Hara could actually be spreading something that is true that the other person doesn't want anybody to know and actually still embarrasses them and causes them harm, even though it's true. And so, so for example, if I were to tell people that you were, well, we were just talking about homosexuality. What if I told people you were gay and you're not? Okay, that's slander. What if I told people you were gay and you are, but you didn't want everybody to know that? That's certainly still Lashon Hara, but it's still true. You understand the difference? So Lashon Hara is still dealing with causing harm, whether it's true or not. Okay? But you're sharing information that's causing harm. All right? Okay. Slander is doing the same thing, but it's slander because it's not true. Okay? All right.
Great, thank you. The last question I had, Rabbi, is about 29. What will be an example of cursing your parents?
I don't know. I'm not even saying that as a wise guy. I really don't know. I would think that it's doing something that would be a curse to them. That would really be the problem. Kind of like when Yeshua is dealing with them, with their whole idea that they don't take care of their mother and father because they say they gave all the wealth that they would have taken care of with them to the temple. Right? They call it korban, the offering. They give it to the temple. And that curses the parents. Okay? Because what a curse is basically? Suffering, things that make you suffer. When Yahweh says, I will curse you, he's saying, I'm going to make you suffer harm so that you'll then be inspired to change what you're doing. So if you're causing harm to your parents, I'm thinking that's probably what it's kind of talking about. Things that do that. Okay, Ashley? I keep thinking there's no more, and then somebody steps up. Go ahead.
I wanted to know, is it evil tongue speaking to if you go to your rabbi, or is that considered?
No. When you're seeking to get guidance and advice from a leadership person, talking about somebody else is not Lashon Hara. Unless, pay attention everyone, unless you're trying to get that leadership person, like me, to see that person in the same negative way you do. Remember, Lashon Hara, part of it is, one aspect of it is when you're trying to get what that negative you have about somebody and you get others to feel the same way. So if you come to me about somebody and you don't know what to do about it and you're looking for guidance and you're angry, which is fine, then you talk about it. And I will always ask you who it is because then I might have some insight on how to help fix that. So you should tell me these things and who they are. But if your effort is to convince me to be mad at them or think of them in the same way you think of them, that's when you've crossed the line. And I will tell you, don't do that. Don't try to get me mad at them or me to feel about them the way you do. You can tell me it's the way you feel so I can deal with helping you deal with that. So you deal with your feelings. But when you start to try to get me to see them in that same negative way, now you cross the line. And I'll stop you if that starts to happen. So don't worry about it. If it starts, I'll say, no, stop, we're not going to do that. Okay? I will help you deal with your feelings. I will help you deal with what happened. But you're not going to try to then convince me to come into the same place where I now look at that person the way you're looking at them.
Okay, with that, then with clarification, because I've been thinking about this the last month or so when it happened. When I came to you with a particular individual, was that Lashon Haraning? That one time?
Nothing when you come to me is Lashon Hara just because you come to me about it. If you're trying to
Do you know
get me
what I'm
to feel
talking
a
about, though?
certain way about them, then that might have been going in that direction, and I'm sure I would have stopped you if that was happening. Okay?
Do you know what part?
I don't remember it. It doesn't matter. Okay, what matters is if it was a problem, I would have corrected you. Okay? So don't worry about that. Okay? And look, and you're not going to be perfect at this. If you're upset about something and you're angry and you have some negative emotions about somebody and you come and talk to me, you're going to be upset and you're going to want everybody to see that you're right and they're wrong and blah, blah, blah. If I feel like you're starting to cross that line, I will stop you and say, hold on, stop, let's not do that. And some of you have been in counsel with me when I've done that, so you know what I'm talking about. I won't let you go there, so don't worry about it. If you crossed that line, I would have stopped you. Okay? All right. Because there has to be a way to share so that something can be dealt with, but where the line is kind of maintained that you don't try now to get, because that's where Lashon Hara is. You're mad at so-and-so because so-and-so hurt your feelings and did something and you're mad, and then you go to all these other people to say that because you want them to feel the same way about that person's a jerk or a loser or they were mean, no, see, let's not do that. Let's not try to get other people now to think negatively about somebody else. All right? But if you come to me, maybe I can help you deal with it, and maybe you're right. Let's say you're right, that person really did something wrong to you, then I can maybe go and help fix that. But I can't do that if you don't tell me what's going on and who did it. All right? Some of you think, but I don't want to get them in trouble. I'm not here to get people in trouble. I'm here to fix trouble. Okay? To straighten some things out. And so if you come to me, I'm going to ask you who you're talking about. And you should tell me. Okay? I'm not going to go to them and embarrass you or get you in all kinds of... I can't help you if I don't know what I'm dealing with and who it is. I may know the person better than you, and I may understand more that you're just misinterpreting somebody's rough personality in a way that really wasn't intended. I mean, I may be able to help you see things in a different way without having to do anything more than just talk to you. So give me an opportunity, because after all, I know more of the congregation generally than you do. And I may know them better through counsel, so I may have some insight. Okay? All right. Anything else on live stream? All right, go.
From Anna Uden, chapter 19, verse 31. Rabbi, what if a parent/guardian has a spiritualist look into their children's life? Would the parent be defiled or the child? Asking because I've actually had this done in my life.
Look, things that happen before you know better, okay? Don't feel guilty about it or overthink, and over-worry about it from that point of view. However, if you went to a spiritist or somebody brought one into the thing and everything like that, ask Father, go before the Father and say, Father, anything that's happened here that shouldn't have happened here, I ask that you would annul it, that you would, break any bonds that may have inadvertently, unintentionally come together in that way, and own that from that point of view. This is why it's in our 8 declarations, I think it's number 7, okay, where we ask the Father to annul any and all agreements that we may have made at any time with any and all entities and organizations that may be in conflict with Him. All right? And so that's what I would do. Because, look, Yahweh knew that happened before He called you. And so He has a plan for that. Just go to Him and ask Him what His plan is for that. I say, Father, please handle this in whatever way you already intended to handle so that I can have peace about what this thing that happened with my children. All right? Or if you were the one who did it, then you have peace with the fact that you did that. You did it not knowing. So you have to find a way to have peace with that. Okay, next.
From Michael J. E., from Leviticus chapter 20, verses 23 through 24. Is this a promise for those who set themselves apart? If we don't do as the nations do in the dispersion, verses 23, then verse 24, we will inherit the land or make it to the millennial reign?
I think you can definitely take some of that way. I mean, this is the verse that's kind of like the do not do as they do, right? And do not walk in the laws of the nations, which I'm driving out before you, for all these things they do that I loathe. And he says, but I say to you, you're going to possess their land, and I myself give it to you to possess it, a land flowing milk and honey. Look, that is the metaphor. It's the literal here, but the metaphor for what we're looking forward to. So yes, if you don't walk in the ways of the world and you separate yourself, that there is a kingdom coming that you will inherit and be a part of. So yes. But just this here is actually a literal instruction of something that literally did happen for them. Of course, they also broke it, which is why they got vomited out. All right, next.
Last question in regards to the sexual laws from Sarah O. Rabbi, please help me understand. Could this be a demonic possession that makes them do these sexual acts like sleeping with animals?
All right. I really am reluctant because of knowing how much the demon, devil, possessed, excuse is used for almost everything. I'm very reluctant to go there. Okay? Could it be? Absolutely. All right? Does that make it what it is? Absolutely not. It could be, but it certainly doesn't need to be. Okay? I mean, men especially, women too, with animals has been going on forever. And it's not necessarily because of demons and stuff. Just like men with men and women with women, this goes all the way back before the flood, etc. This is nothing new. And I don't think it needs, demonic influence to do that. It's the flesh. Okay? The flesh craves and desires and doesn't care where it gets it from so much. Okay? And so, I'm very reluctant to attribute anything that I don't know absolutely is demonic and of the devil to them. I don't want to give them more credit for anything than they actually need. Okay? Now let's understand what I've taught you though. If the demons are part of an administration led by Hasatan, then they would be in line with the way Hasatan functions, yes or no? Which means that generally speaking, they are only feeding on something you want to do anyway, which would make this not demonic necessarily, but encouraged by. But if you don't want it, look, if you never thought to have any sex with an animal, the demons and devils never going to get you to do that. If you never thought to get drunk until you couldn't see straight, you'll never get drunk until you see. The demons won't make you ever do that. If you never did whatever it is that you never did, because it's not something that tempts you. Now, things that you have done, that's a door that they can push on because you want to do those things. You liked it. You enjoyed it on whatever warped and sick level, right? Things that you know that you shouldn't do, but you want to do them. And the reason I say that is because I used to say that, you sicko, right? Because you do these things because you want to. Well, no, I don't. No, now you sound like Paul. And Paul said the same thing you struggle with. Those things that I don't want to do, I do, and what I want to do, I don't do. We all struggle with that on some level in certain things that we really don't want to do them, but we really do want to do them. All right? You are not going to do any of these sexual things with the people you shouldn't be doing them with, whether they're family members or whatever, if you don't want to. And so let's not give the demons and the devil power to make you do things you don't want to do. That's not their job. That's not their role that Abba lets them do. Abba allows them to exist because they're there to encourage you in the stupid things you want to do so they come out in the open where you can deal with them. Okay? That's why Hasatan said that, Job, well, I can't do anything with Job because Job is perfect. There's nothing there to work with. Of course, his excuse was that's because you give him everything. And Yahweh said, no, it's because he's perfect. He says, take everything away, you'll see. Right? All right, so, and Job certainly could have done or been tempted to do other things when those things were happening, but nope. Okay? All right, next. Oh, that was the last one? All right, good. All right, so about 9:15. It's perfect. We can end here. Excellent study tonight. What do you think of a teaching? That was another one on my notes here. It didn't really have anything to do with this per se, but we did talk about forgiveness of sin from the sacrifices. What do you think of a teaching that finally clarifies the idea of covered by the blood? Would that be good? Because I see that very little in Scripture, the way that Christianity uses it, if at all. And the whole idea of this obsession, this blood obsession that they have. And I think that, I was watching something today, and there was some praise music going on as part of what I was trying to get to a teaching to see, and they're just singing these mainstream things that are just, they're like, it's almost sort of gory, the way they're obsessed with the blood and the way, this whole idea, drenched in the blood, and like, oh my gosh, So I think we need to have a teaching about that, because that doesn't seem right to me scripturally, okay? All right? We are covered by him and his death, burial, and resurrection, and the blood is important, but I think that we've had it swing way off into a crazy land that's not where it needs to be. And in a way that really, I think if I was a worldly person that didn't know anything about this stuff, never heard of it, and I started hearing about it, I said, you guys are a little weird. Because this whole blood thing, it gets to be very gory and very gross, really, in a sick way. And I don't think it's appropriate. Okay? I mean, yes, his death, burial, and resurrection, and his shedding of his blood, like the shedding of the animal's blood, is for these things, but it's something to be much more reverent about, I think, and to look at it in a more appropriate way. I mean, have you seen the Christian T-shirts that are out there? With blood and this and that. I mean, there's some really, I think it's inappropriate stuff. So anyway, so I wrote that on my list of things to do. So we might have a teaching on be set apart, covered by the blood, and Sex 101. And that one will be presented by Rabu, okay? The Rabu. Sex 101 with Rabu Steve Berkson. That's I don't know how they turn Rebbitzin into Rabbutsin or something. I don't know how that would even work. So, anyway, we need to get out of this thing quickly here. So let's get somebody to come up and close us in prayer. Who's going to do this for us? All right, Ben, come on up. You can come close us in prayer, because I got to get you away from my daughter anyway. So. Look, if you're going to marry her someday, I got to, get used to me embarrassing you, so. All right. Okay, if you'll all rise, we're going to close in prayer. We're led by Mr. Ben White.
Abba, Father, thank you for allowing us to come together and study your word. I just ask that you help us discern those things that we want to do. Just help us understand that we need to get rid of our desires that don't line up with his, and just help us understand that we need to kill that part of us, kill that flesh, so that we trust and have faith and see the blessings that come from aligning our values with his values. And I just ask all this in your son, Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. So those of you that would like to do the wave goodbye thing, come on this side. If you don't want to be on camera, go on that side. Most of you are already on this side.
That's true.
By the way, all of you that sit on this side, there's nothing wrong with those chairs on that side. Don't want to be on camera? All right. All right, so we do love these people out there. We know that they're a part of our congregation. Many of them are at large, and they come with us every week as much as they can and participate. So we want to let you guys out there know how much we appreciate you, that we're aware of you, and that we care about you. So we're going to wish everybody out there a Laila Tov, which is a good night, Shavua Tov, which is a good week, and we're going to tell them we love them, all right? On 3. 1, 2,